Hello, hello. Can you hear us? Hello,
Yep.
hello.
It's a bit. Can I put this a bit more silent? Is that a thing? Mm.
Hi. I can talk, 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 talk. Is it? Thank you. hmm Hi, Isabel. Not too bad. Yeah. Yes, we'll see you. I'll see you in a bit then. Okay. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is Isabel Campillo from Eurovisions. What you're Hey everybody.
So we have figured out the issue. Good morning, very welcome. No, it was, no, anyway, for the people at home, thank you for being with us, and for the people here in the venue, welcome to the second conference day of the Eurovisions International Conference, the 7th edition. So we are welcoming all our friends here and online. So feel free to ask questions in the commentaries in YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and X. So this conference day will focus on the big question, what made the Swedish music miracle possible? And we will have very, very nice panelists and presenters, and presented by very, very nice people, my colleagues Sofia Vieira Lopes and Isabel Campelo.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm not going to say much more than Irving has already said, but I hope you join us throughout the morning because we have very interesting invited speakers. And as Irving just said, we will be focusing mainly on the Swedish miracle. So for those of you who are interested in music, I think it's everybody here and online, please stay with us because it will be worthwhile. So Sofia?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm very happy to be here in the 7th edition of the Eurovisions conference. So it's a pleasure to work with my colleagues. And I have to thank you, Isabel, thank you, Irving, thank you, Wilfred. You don't see Wilfred, but he is there. And thank you, Carla, in Mozambique right now. And
thank you, Felix.
And thank you, Felix, for taking photos. And thank you, Media Evolution, for hosting us here in this second day. Before I ask Andreas to come here to the stage to say some words, I have to do the official thanks because our work is possible because we have a good team of partners, we have a good team of friends helping us during these 7 years. So it is important to say also thank you, Erin, for hosting us and for helping us to make this possible. And as well to Paul Lashmana in the technical issues and putting everything.
A big
working.
round of applause.
Yeah, and Emra in the backstage too, and our wonderful musician Korjun working with us from I think 5 years on. So thank you, Korjun, for playing nice songs for us. So I want also to thanks to ESC Insight, our media partner, and Ben for collaborating with us, and of course our institutions. I will not name all of them because big names. So I pass to Andreas to come here and to say hello, and thank you, Andreas, for hosting us.
Thank you so much, Sofia. Thank you all for being here, coming here to meet Evolution City, coming to Malmö. And the second day is very good that we are at Media Evolution City because it's a place where new ideas are born and also transformed, and many people who work with that also in the music industry are here. We will later hear a presentation by Rita Hafner, who's the foresight head of Media Evolution City, and we have this foresight circle on the futures of sound and song. This is a book that Media Evolution City hands out for free for everyone who is here. You can also grab another copy for those who have not attended here today. She will talk more about it later. There are 3 scenarios for the futures of sound and song in this book, but also a commentary, and one of them by our dear colleague Nicholas, who was yesterday, a very sharp essay about music and power and participation. So thank you very much for being here, and without further ado, I think we should start our day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank
you
all.
so much, Andreas. And you're totally right. We will start the day not with the future of sound, because this will finish our day. We will start our day with someone who was groundbreaking in his research, the first one who really did an in-depth analysis of how Eurovision works and of how the Swedish Melody Festival works. And he's a great inspiration. He was a great inspiration for my doctoral thesis, for me to become Dr. Eurovision. And I'm extremely proud to welcome here on this stage Alf Björnberg.
Thank you. This is on, yes. Thanks very much for that kind presentation. I wrote my PhD thesis in 1987, and it dealt with the music in the Swedish selection program for Eurovision. And of course, these two are related, but in in Sweden, this preliminary contest, the selection contest, has sort of taken a life of its own. It's called Melodifestival and the Melody Festival. And to distinguish when it's necessary between these, I will use the two designations. What I will do here is to outline some historical conditions which have shaped the Swedish music industry and its relationship to public service media. You will notice that this is based on largely on rather old research. The bulk of my research in this context was done before my PhD thesis. I have written a few things about Melodifestivalen and Eurovision since then, but I haven't done that kind of thorough research into this. So, as concerns the present and the future, I will formulate my conclusions in terms of speculations or questions intended for the following panel discussion, and I look forward to hearing what it's really like today. Okay, so I start in the old times. Public service media, radio and television, and the popular music industry. And my conclusion is that at least since the 1950s, there has been a symbiotic relationship between public service media, then called Swedish radio, SR, and the music industry. And what I mean by that, there are of course several aspects to this, but one is that I noticed that in the popular music sector, in the media, program producers, presenters, and so on were quite often recruited from the popular music business scene. In distinction, for example, to Norway and Denmark, the neighboring Scandinavian countries, where also in popular music, people working in the media tended to come from an academic background. In Sweden, they came quite often from the music business and from musicianship. A vital change in the Swedish mediascape occurred in 1961, and this is due to the competition from pirate radio. Now, pirate radio in the early 60s, it was a phenomenon. It was noticeable in several countries in northwestern Europe, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, UK. And in all these countries, public service media had to sort of react to the new kind of competition. And Sweden stands out in this context very rapidly after the inception of radio station Radio Nord. Swedish public service radio started what's called Melodiradion, melody radio, a quite new format, 12 hours a day of light music. And one prominent element in this new light music channel was the chart shows, which had proved popular on pirate radio. The first one, Tio I Top 10, launched in 1961, and when it turned out quite rapidly that most of the songs on top 10, whether they were foreign songs or produced in Sweden, tended to be in the English language. Svensktoppen was launched, which had as a requirement song lyrics in Swedish. Also, Kvällstoppen, the evening top, was a sales chart revealing the development of record sales in Sweden. Now, Svensktoppen is important in relation to Sweden's activities in the Eurovision contest. It was a platform for showcasing domestic music industry products. Often Swedish language covers of imported songs, but also quite a lot of original material. And throughout the 1960s and 1970s, songs which appeared in the Swedish Eurovision preliminaries, the Melodifestivalen, also, of course, regularly appeared on Svensktoppen. And a major actor in this context was Stickan Andersson, songwriter and publisher. He himself wrote Swedish lyrics for some 3,000 songs of foreign origin, but also he secured the sub-publishing rights for not only for Sweden but for Scandinavia. So this is a sort of business model from the period when record sales and publishing rights were sort of main sources of income in the music business. Still, for a very long time, there was a quite noticeable, what I've called the inferiority complex among Swedish media officials and in the music business and among journalists as well. Swedish music was sort of homespun, amateurish in comparison to what was alleged as the sophisticated music coming from the UK and from continental Europe. Now, in 1974, as you all know, this changed when Sweden had its first Eurovision win with Waterloo. This, of course, was the start of ABBA's international career. And this was perhaps unexpectedly smooth process, thanks to the network which Stickan Andersson had established in the previous decade or so of international contacts. The 1970s was also a problem of a period of polarization in the Swedish music scene. There was a strong left-wing music movement. There was extensive critique of commercial music at a very often used term with not very clear definition. In 1975, when Swedish television organized the first final to take place in Sweden, the first Eurovision final, there were several alternative activities collected under the name Alternativfestivalen, the alternative festival. And it's interesting, I won't go deeper into that, how public service media managed to observe a very delicate balance between, on the one hand, the so-called commercial music scene, and on the other, the alternative music scene. In 1976, the year after, Sweden didn't participate in the Eurovision, and it was said, this is, we will abstain for good. For good turned out to last for 1 year. So from 1977 onwards, Sweden has been a very faithful participant in the Eurovision Song Contest. In the 1980s, Swedish ESC music was dominated to quite a large extent of what in Swedish is called dansband, which is in a way quite unproblematically translatable into dance band. It's a genre featuring some characteristic musical traits, but also context of this dissemination and use music for dancing, lyrics in Swedish, and so on. And throughout the 1980s, the dance band industry dominated Eurovision preliminaries in Sweden. A prominent figure in this context was entrepreneur, I think you can call him Bert Karlsson, in several ways a sort of 1980s version of the kind of music industry tycoon represented by Stickan Andersson, although with a somewhat stronger focus on the domestic rather than the international market. Now we come to what has been termed the Swedish music export miracle or music export wonder. And this is in time concomitant with what happened in 1989, which is, as in European politics in general, it's also a sort of watershed moment in the context of the ESC. I refer here to Dean Voletic, his book Post-War Europe and the Eurovision Song Contest, which I think is essential reading for anyone dealing with the Eurovision Song Contest and its history. So very much of what has happened since then would have been unthinkable up to that point in time. But anyway, in the early 1990s, there was increasing talk of a Swedish music export miracle, and several pages of journalism were devoted to trying to establish how much money do we as Swedes or Swedish companies make from music export. It turns out in retrospect that it's not very easy to actually put figures on this. I refer here to Rasmus Fleischer's article from 2017 in the collection Made in Sweden, edited by Thomas Bossus and myself, where he points out the problems of putting exact figures of music export incomes. Anyway, one aspect of the music export miracle is a change in songwriting procedures from individual songwriters competing to songwriting as a collaborative process. Here it's useful, I think, to refer to John Seabrook's book The Song Machine, dealing quite extensively with some aspects of this development in Sweden. Not very much, though, in relation to the Eurovision Song Contest. So, this sort of, as it was called yesterday, song factory production process. My question is, to myself and to people, to researchers working on this now, what are the consequences for, in the context of Swedish Eurovision Song Contest material? There are very clear indications that the song factory model, the collaborative songwriting process, is gaining significance in this context. But I don't have much detail about that. And it may be observed, this is sort of of a side observation that the three ESC winners from Sweden after ABBA in 1984, 1991 and 1999 are both musically and production-wise are sort of old school products in the dance band industry tradition. So here I ask myself and you, how come? I remember at all of these three occasions being somewhat surprised. Is this music popular in Europe? And if so, why? The contemporary Melodifestivalen field is very much shaped by what was happened in 2002, where the format of Melodifestivalen was drastically changed from previously a one evening show featuring 10 or maybe 12 songs where a winner was selected. Now this was transformed into a sequence of several programs, Saturday evening prime time shows featuring heats and heat winners, which were then collected into a concluding final. The number of songs presented in this context expanded to around 30 songs instead of 10. And to me, this seems to be to indicate a strengthening of the ties between public service media and the popular music industry, and not to forget by this time televised talent contests, notably in the Swedish context, Swedish Idol, which has been sort of a school for developing new artistic talent, which then appear in Swedish Eurovision context. And my impression is that increasingly, since the early 21st century, is the contest is very deliberately used from the point of view of the organizers, public survey media producers, as a sort of smorgasbord demonstrating the degree of diversity which Swedish popular music industry is capable of. Of course, with some 30 songs, you have ample possibilities to present a very, very broad and diverse stylistic picture. And I suspect, without having very much to substantiate this with, that this is a major motivation between this kind of stylistic diversity, rather than, to refer to what was discussed yesterday, rather than some sort of cultural anchorage among any or other subgroup of the audience. Finally, it's been clear also since the start of the 21st century that it seems that the music export, miracle or not, appears in Eurovision contexts as the export of musical and industrial know-how. Of course, songwriting, but also technical television production and stage technology. Voletic discusses this and claims that in recent years the contest organization has been dominated by the commercial ambitions and technological superiority of Europe's north, not least in, I would add, not least Sweden. So, what I would like to know more about, and not knowing enough is what are the policies, networks, cooperation and channels which have enabled this development. And with those questions, I finish this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alf Björnberg, and we can open the question and answer session. And I'm asking for permission to ask the first question, because I'm very curious whether you could tell us if this symbiosis between Swedish television and the Swedish music industry is part of the Swedish television's policy to support national cultural industries.
The shorter answer is I don't know. I would suspect that today it has to do with the changing evaluation of the expression commercial music. In the 1970s, as I hinted at, this was a very problematic concept. And most public organizations, not least the media, tried to distance themselves from what was considered commercial. But 20 years later, the music export miracle amounted to a massive re-evaluation of commerciality. So without having gone much into detail, I would suspect one could find a very, very thorough U-turn, not rapid, but a gradual U-turn on these matters.
Okay, so now questions from the audience. Please.
Thank you, Alf, for your presentation. I think this is so interesting, and we will discuss this further a little later. But can you please elaborate a little about the radio development from the 50s going over to the 60s, and the more importance of the Svensktoppen and stuff like that for the development of the interest of Eurovision from your perspective?
Yes, as I indicated, Melody Radio, was a very, very unexpected and very drastic change in programming policy. Up to that point in time, Sweden was quite like neighboring countries in a very cautious attitude towards the programming of popular music, especially recent pop and rock music. But with Radio Nord, Olof Rydbeck, who was then director of Swedish Radio, who was normally a very, very sort of cautious and diplomatic figure, has been quoted in discussion protocols with quite drastic language. We have to compete, have to compete this competition to death. It's a quite strong language to come from that source. And it turns out that matters of cultural values and good and bad music, which had been expressed quite often until that time, were in reality not very important when there was a question for the first time in Sweden of a competition of listeners. The pirate stations had to be competed out of the picture. So the same tendencies are noticeable both in Norway and Denmark, but in a very much more gradual way throughout the 1960s. In Sweden, this changed overnight. And there were some peculiar technological conditions enabling this. I won't go into that detail. It could take all day. But it was a very special situation, technology enabling rapid change in programming policy. Still, of course, as a public service organization, Swedish radio and television had to sort of demonstrate sort of arm's length distance towards commercial interests. But in practice, there was, I would say, a quite beneficial patterns of cooperation.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you as well for the inspiration on studying Eurovision Song Contest and the national selections. So, of course, my question is a question of someone from abroad. Because we are talking, and you are talking about this relationship of public service media and music industry and this polarization, and I want to know exactly what is the power of the state, of the governments on these kind of things. If you know something about that, the strategies of the governments, how they affected these kind of relationships on public service media and in music industry. If you can elaborate. I know that maybe could be an answer for all day, but...
Yes, I would say somewhat simplified answer that in Sweden the direct influence of the state on public service media is very limited. Public service media operate by multi-year, 4 or 5 year charters with the state and the parliament regulating the broad outlines of their activities, but the state has very little influence over day-to-day decisions concerning programming. And of course, in these days, this is a topic for increasing discussion. What is the point of public service media? How should the state, the government, try to influence it or not try to influence it? But I would say for most of the post-war period, this has been a public service media have had quite an, in several respects, an independent status towards the government.
Thank you, Alf. I have another question for you. You were talking about the influence of the dance band music industry until the late 90s. Has there been a kind of a struggle of power between this industry and the, let's say, the more modern approach to popular music? I'm asking this from a point of view of a German citizen who is living this struggle between the traditional Schlager industry and pop music and German television, trying to avoid for several years Schlager songs in the national final to keep the format modern.
Yeah, I would say that these genre distinctions are rapidly sort of blurring at the edges. There are comments from the 1970s when a good Eurovision Schlager was opposed to Svensk Topp. And there's some speculation, of course, as to exactly what stylistical traits were referred to. But I would say from the 1990s onwards, mainstream popular music in Sweden has been diversified, and this distinction between dance band and Schlager and Svensk Topp, which perhaps once were valid, are not very valid anymore. If you listen to Svensk Topp music today, Svensktoppen is still broadcast every week. which is quite extraordinary. A radio show started in 1961, except for a 3-year period in the 1980s, has been broadcast continuously since then. And I would say today it's difficult to separate in musical style terms what's done on Svensk Toppen and sort of Swedish mainstream pop in general.
Okay, thank you. Wilfred, do we have any questions from the internet?
No, we don't actually. But we do have a compliment by Niels Valk from the Netherlands, and he's saying thank you for the wonderful presentation. So I just want to relay that. But no questions, Irvin.
Okay, so I can just join our online viewer. Thank you so much, Afbjörn, for this wonderful presentation. And a big applause. And we will be back in a short moment for our first roundtable. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Isabel Campillo from Eurovisions. What you're about to see in a couple of minutes is some of my students who were challenged to sing some ABBA songs. Some of them had never even heard of them. So I hope you enjoy it and please stay tuned for the rest of the conference. Thank you. Olá, então, como é que te chamas?
Nádia,
Que idade tens?
12.
Olha, o que é que tu vais cantar?
Money, money, money dos ABBA.
E já conhecias a canção?
Sim.
De onde?
De uma amiga.
De uma amiga que te mostrou?
Sim.
Ok, muito bem. Então vamos a isso, Nádia.
In my dreams, I have a plan. If I got me a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work it all. I fool around and never bore. Money, money, money must be funny in the rich man's world. Money, 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 how is sunny in the rich man's world. All the things I could do if I had a little money. It's a rich man's world. It's a rich man's world.
Então, como é que te chamas?
Eu chamo Maria Beatriz.
E quantos anos tens?
Tenho 12 anos.
E o que é que vais cantar na festa?
Eu vou cantar o The Winner Takes It All dos ABBA.
E já conhecias a canção?
Não.
Nunca tinhas ouvido?
Não, eu conheci porque a minha professora me disse para cantar numa apresentação no final do ano. I don't wanna talk about things we've gone through. The dog is hurting me. Now it's history. I've played all my cards, and that's what you've done too. Nothing more to say. No more race to play. The winner takes it all. Losers standing small beside the victory. That's our destiny.
Olá!
Olá,
Então, qual é o teu nome?
chamo Beatriz Cardoso,
Que idade é que tens, Beatriz?
tenho 17 anos.
Então, e o que é que tu vais cantar na festa?
Vou cantar o SOS dos ABBA.
E olha, já conhecias a canção?
Sim, conhecia por causa do filme Mamma Mia.
Muito bem. Ok, obrigada.
Não.
Where are those happy days? They seem so hard to find.
Olá, como é que te chamas?
Sou Ian Rosado, tenho 21 anos. Eu conheço esta música, o Dancing Queen, conheci através do filme da Mamma Mia.
E esta versão do Luís Capaldi?
É muito boa.
Então vamos ouvir um bocadinho. When you get a chance,
You are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine, oh yeah. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Oh, see that girl, watch dancing, singing the dancing queen.
Hello, welcome back to our Eurovision International Conference with a very, very interesting discussion panel on the Swedish music miracle. Again, talking about past, present, and future of Swedish pop music industry. And we are extremely proud to welcome so many very interesting guests. We ask you all who are online to prepare your questions, to write them in the commentary sections, and we will ask our panelists to answer them when there is the questions and answer session. We will start first, and I'm so proud to finally have her with us, Nanne Grönvall, one of Sweden's most beloved artists. I think you know them, you know all. She took part for Sweden in the Eurovision Song Contest 1996. She participated in Melodifestivalen 10 times. She wrote some of the most iconic songs in this competition, but she's also owning her own record label, a publishing company, producing. She has her own foundation, the Nanne Network. So a very interesting guest, and I'm so happy that you're with us tonight, not tonight, this morning. Nanne, thank you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you.
So good morning to the ladies online, and it is my pleasure as well to present Ingrid Tolstad. Ingrid is someone I had the pleasure of meeting some years ago, actually in Norway, as well as Jan Olof here. And she's a senior researcher. Actually, she is not anymore this that I am about to say, but I will pass it on to Ingrid. But she works in Oslo Metropolitan University. She's also a social anthropologist and musicologist, and she has done ethnographic work into Swedish-Russian pop musical collaborations, collaborative songwriting, quality assessment and creative processes, and the digitalization of pop musical production. But Ingrid, do you want to update us about your work condition at this point, please?
Yes, I'm still at the Oslo Metropolitan University. I've just changed from a contract research institute into sort of a regular associate professor position at the Oslo Business School at the Oslo Metropolitan University. So
congratulations.
A bit more teaching.
Yeah, and our third guest in this panel is Jan Olof Gulle. He's professor of music production at the Royal College of Music in Stockholm. He's a visiting professor at Linnaeus University. His professional background is he has been a record producer and musician for many years. He has been actively involved in research related to music production and teaching in higher education. Thank you for being with us. And I think I'd like to start with you, because you have been researching so much on the theoretical framework of the success of Sweden in the music industry. Is there, or has there been any master plan behind that? People said, no, well, we are in a small country, now we want to go and conquer the world?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think there's a master plan. exact one that started 2,000 years back or so that influenced Sweden very much. Now, not in music production, but Sweden's been very successful, no doubt about that, in music production over the years and songwriting. But also in writing, for example, many novelists have made it big on internationally. So there is not the only media thing where Sweden's been successful. I think there are many explanations to that, but I wouldn't say there's a master plan. But there are a few individuals that we have identified who, and I've mentioned two of them earlier, Bert Karlsson and Stickan Andersson. There's two, and there are more important persons who've been what we in the research project I'm working, we call them icebreakers, people who go a bit before everyone else doing stuff that's, for example, like Bert Karlsson, who started with nothing really, no really insights in the music industry, and after a couple of years had a third of the Swedish music sales in records. That was back in the 80s. That's a good example. Stickan Andersson is a very good example, which is a similar history. Like Alf mentioned, wrote the lyrics for thousands of songs and had the copyright for many other songs. And some of those have found business models that works. If you take Stickan Andersson, for example, of the songs he wrote, those 1,000 songs were not hits. Many of them were on the B-side, on singles. But please remember that the copyright income for a sale, when you bought a single at the time, was the same for the B-side as for the hit on the A-side. So that's a very good, clever business model. You can see others developing business models, Swedes that develop business models that work. One is Ingvar Kamprad, IKEA. Most of you probably, many people have furniture from IKEA. Spotify is another example. I can go on like this. So music, I would say, as some scholars, one of them is Erik Weisbard, American scholar, he says it's a part of how Swedes work in different industries. And we can see there are some car companies, there are bearings from SKF and stuff like that, where Sweden has been successful. So I said the Swedish thing is not just, there's not a master plan of the Swedish industry. No, I would say no.
Thank you so much. I kindly ask for a second microphone so that we can have the discussion a little bit and not so much interrupted by the back and forth. So we have someone here with us who has had a career in the Swedish music industry for more than 4 decades. You had hits in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2010s, and in the 2020s. Nanne, how did you live this experience of the Swedish music maker? Was it in the 80s already your aim to have an international career outside of Sweden?
Are you talking to Yes? You're talking to me, yes?
Yes, I do.
Because I can't see you, so I can hear you vaguely. I think when we started in the 80s, when we were performing with the Sound of Music in 1986 and 1987, and actually this jacket, I put it on especially for this event because this one actually is from 1986, not from the performance, but from staged as a group Sound of Music. And by then we absolutely had the ambition to make it very big, and I think it was about the same in 1996 when we performed with the Villa, as well as when we released Thailand with One More Time. But after that, since we had kids at home, and I felt that the ambition was more just to be able to keep on working with music. And that's also why I started only performing songs in Swedish in Melodifestivalen. Since I, after that, decided that I felt so satisfied with just being able to work with it in Sweden, and has done ever since. And every now and then I go to do some Eurovision or performances abroad, but my focus is on Sweden. And that's also
However,
why
you have been taken part in the UK national final. What was the momentum at that point? Was this a point where you said, "Now I want to try the Anglo-Saxon market"?
I just loved the song, so I felt it was an adventure, and it was really great fun to do that. I love the song "Man," and it was just to be in the top of the Pops studio, that I have been watching as a kid. And suddenly to be there, only that was, but it was also, I mean, England has always been a part of my heart. I went there quite early for language courses as a teenager, and so I felt, okay, this country really is a country that I would have loved to represent if I had won with the song. So, but I didn't. As I said, in the end of the 1990s, I felt that all through the time with Highland, and we were touring around in Europe for several years. One day we were in France, the next we were in Belgium, 2 days at home, and then down to Spain. And you really have to have the hunger for making it big abroad, for feeling that you can cope with it, because, and since we had kids at home, and we wanted to be at home with them much more, so it felt like a very natural decision to focus on Sweden. And I'm so happy it's been working so fine ever since. It's still fully booked and working lots and lots here in Sweden. So my ambition is now, I'm 61 years old, so I feel I've really experienced so much, and I think that traveling in Sweden is the best. But at the same time, I'm going down to Spain in November to do 2 performances, but it's not every now and then. But no, I am not going to head for try to do a big success outside the border. But but I want to keep writing music. But we're writing with One More Time, and we're going to release that, and there will probably be some songs in English, and that is for more than 20 years.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have the first question from the online audience, Wilfred.
Yep. The question is actually, how close does Melodifestivalen represent the Swedish music taste, and what genres are currently left out, sadly? That's a question to the panel. I think Nana wanted to... Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Was it for me? Yes?
For the panel, but go ahead.
Okay. I think today in Melodifestivalen we have a big wide we have almost all genres, and I think that's their goal and what they're having. And since there are more than only one Melodifestivalen, it's knocking on my door. Someone else has to talk. I have to leave just a little short while. Sorry.
Okay, so, and now for something completely different, as Monty Python would say, or probably not. So Ingrid, that's on you now. So from your ethnographic work for your PhD on the Swedish company Snowflake and the Russian music industry, I mean, I know what it is because I read your thesis, and in fact it was a great inspiration for my own thesis about the recording studios in Lisbon, Portugal. But can you tell us a little bit about how that started as a context? I mean, not going too deep, because then I have a question to ask you about this.
Okay, so that's, I think I'm hearing you. It's just a little bit difficult to hear what you're saying.
Would you like me to repeat?
I'll just, are you asking me how I came to do the ethnographic work that I did?
Exactly. About Snowflake and the Russian music industry.
Yeah. So I was an aspiring pop artist for a time in Norway, and we were signed to a Norwegian production company, and we were sent to Stockholm to work with a Swedish, well, several songwriters and producers, but one producer in particular, we hit it off really well with. So we kept going there, and he was married to a former Russian pop artist who'd kind of quit her career to come and live with him in Stockholm. But what happened when she came there was that people in Russia who were in her network of the Russian music industry became really intrigued by this her alliance with the Swedish producer. And he'd been one of the, involved in stuff with Ace of Base and some of these big Swedish names. So they started to ask if she could mediate contact. And since I was working with them at the time, I was kind of in the middle of them building up some kind of mediating company, really, specializing in mediating between the Russian and the Swedish industries. And I was lucky enough to get money to do that. And of course, since I was already acquainted with this producer, I got very good. I was invited into a lot of different studios with big producers and songwriters. And I think there was this, in terms, for instance, in terms of Eurovision, and there was this whole moment with the digitalization of the music industries where for a lot of the Swedish music professionals who'd been earning really, really good money in the international music industry as well, they saw really like a really downturn in income from copyright, because that's the kind of the copyright remuneration system. And so since the Russian industry was working differently, I mean, they didn't really have a functioning copyright remuneration system. They didn't really have to wait for the remuneration to come back when they worked with Russia, but they could actually work for cash payments. So there was like a new business model, really, that emerged in that setting. So a lot of the things that I write about is precisely how when these two industries meet in the studio, they come with different preferences and different structural conditions. It actually influences what they do together, which was
I'm sorry to interrupt you, because my next question, related to what you are telling us, is whether you think that there was a mutual influence between the way that the Russian music operated and the Swedish.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Whether you think that there has been a mutual influence between the Russian music industry, or the way they operated, which is what you were just saying, and the Swedish industry. How
if there's a mutual influence. Well, I think at that time, I mean, there was still quite early after the fall of the communist regime, where they had a monopoly, and there was sort of this vibe about the West and going to the West, and that was kind of where the cool music was, and Sweden had a really big star. So in that sense. But I also think that since that was also a moment where there were all these insecurities in the sort of Western industries about how to generate income, there was this new market. So the way that things worked in Russia was perhaps much more similar, for instance, to what we know as the 360 deal, where producers were not really necessarily music producers, but there were more like a management capacity that were taking care of all kinds of aspects of artists' careers, and where the main source of income was really from concert gigs. So if there's a mutual influence, yes, in a way, but I think that was also part of sort of a cultural movement. And I think, like, for instance, today the ties have been really cut in that sense. But I think also the Eurovision was an arena where, which was important. I mean, we saw a lot of Swedish songwriters and producers also taking on commissions for some of the former Soviet states and in the Eurovision. So there was definitely a moment there where there were both interested in working across and kind of starting to establish some ways of working together, which is, I think, pretty much not that existent at the moment. But
This is a very, very interesting insight. I think many of our viewers would not know about the relationships between the Russian and the Swedish music industry, but this raises a question about international networks. And we just heard that Stikan Andersson was the first one to build these networks. However, we have the impression with the Swedish music miracle that it's a kind of Swedish invasion of the music markets, like we had the British invasion in the US. How important are international networks and cooperation for the Swedish music industry, Jan Olof?
Very important.
It's not. It's on. Sorry. It's here. Here.
Now we're talking. Yeah. Well, it's very important. The international stuff is very important, of course, and the domestic market is also very important. I would say that the Russian influence in Sweden is as close to zero as it can be, but the American is very, very big if you compare that. And of course the British, if you go back, the German influence was very big until the 40s. Then something happened that closed that, more or less. But still in the 50s, German influence was very big in Sweden. So, but the international influence is important. And starting off with, if we go back 50 years, we all know that ABBA won the Eurovision, and they did quite well in other countries outside Sweden, not at least in Britain. At the same date as they won, the same week, a Swedish song, Hooked on a Feeling with Björn Skifs, was #1 on the American Billboard. And then that opened more or less some doors, not in America, but for a lot of Swedes opened their eyes and said, if he can do it, if they can do it, we can do it as well. So it was one going first, and many others have followed. And if we go back maybe 30 years or so, there's a guy called Dennis Pop who was not so much into Eurovision, but very much into doing great pop music. Starting as a DJ, doing remixes. He started a team. You may have heard of Cheiron, a group of producers. One of them is Martin Sandberg, Max Martin. You may have heard of him. He's now the most successful producer ever on the American Billboard. Why is he successful, and many of his colleagues? Maybe because they are from Sweden. They've learned from, as kids, to work together in eye level, as we say, not top down. So they work with other people, respecting them for who they are, and producing the music, doing the music as good as they can. Not the American top-down system that we have seen over the years. And if we go back to the days when Alf talked about, before Svensktoppen and before, in the 60s, there were American companies in Sweden, some British companies, record companies. The Swedish domestic companies were not that strong. When I worked in the music, started working in the music industry in the 80s, that was still the case. We had some strong American companies, and their job was to promote American music in Sweden. I worked with a Swedish band who was #1 on the charts when an American band at the same label were on #2. That was a problem. When they came by the name of Toto, was the orchestra I'm talking about, they said, "You fucking idiots! You should be #2. We should be #1 because we're Americans." That's how it was. And of course, that's how that's how international work sometimes goes. At the same time, when Dennis Pop and others showed we can make good music here, more and more interest came from America. And when I've been at conferences in North America, they don't say, I heard one executive say, I don't care what's going on in Nashville or Los Angeles or New York, I want to know what's going on in Stockholm, because that's where the center of music is. And that's very much about the collaborative, like we talked about earlier, the collaborative working model, not the top-down model. I can talk about this for hours, I promise you.
I can imagine. But I think.
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
I also think that, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work into collaborative songwriting, and I would say that, the co-writing today is kind of the gold standard in the industry of popular music, for how hit songs or yeah, popular music is made. And I think that the Swedes, also in terms of how you talked about this hierarchical way of working together. I mean, co-writes work where songwriters work in different constellations all the time, and they move, and that's kind of an international exercise today as well. So I think that the Swedes have really been pioneering in the practice of co-writing and kind of contributed to this being really like a standard way of working for many years. I see that Norway, who for 20 years ago, writing for other people was really not credible at all, and we didn't really have the few people who did that in Norway went to Sweden, or they went to the UK, or they went to the US. But now that they've been building up, they're working very much in the same way as Sweden had done. I mean, Stockholm itself had so many studios that they could just do collaborative writing amongst themselves in Stockholm. But it's very much the same way of working that has been building up in Norwegian songwriting industry as well, and that has to be international, and because you work with different people all the time. So I really think that having the infrastructure and sort of doing that, and also this focus on sound and being cutting edge has kind of, I think Sweden has been quite important in establishing this as a general practice in the industry.
Yes, so with this collaborative writing, we also see it in this year's Eurovision Song Contest. I think the Croatian song is the only one that has been composed by the same person, and he also wrote the lyrics. All the other songs have been written by several, up to I think 9 songwriters. Is this concept, the artistical concept of the composer and lyricist, something from the past?
Yes. Oh, I can elaborate on that. If you go back 50 years when ABBA won, the idea with that song was to promote ABBA. That was the most important thing. They were in the contest, the Swedish contest, Melody Festival, the year before. They didn't win. It was a surprise for everyone. Another song, sung by one of their best friends, by the way, but that's another story. So they spent most of the year after to produce as good as 2 songs, Hasta Mañana and Waterloo won, and the rest is history, as you know. The next time, if we go over here in Malmö, just half a kilometer that way, there was in 1983 new artist Carola, who won all the juries in Sweden. She was number 3 in Germany the same year with a song called Främling. Nobody had heard about her before. That song, in that competition, the song was in the center. They tested different singers to do it. She did it the best. The one who came second in the competition were offered to sing the song, but she took another one, Varför är kärleken röd? Also a good song, but Främling, and that contributed to Carola's first record, the best-selling debut record ever in Sweden, selling more than 1 million copies. That's quite a lot. Sweden is a small country with 10 million people living here. The third example is if you look up the Swedish song this year, Unforgettable, is written by a couple of people, Joy and Linnea Deb. If you look them up on internet, you can see that Linnea, for example, she has more than 30 songs the last 10-15 years in Eurovision. She was co-writing with Joy and another guy the song Heroes that won it all. I think it was 15. And the song they did last year with the same artists as are representing Sweden this year, the twins Martin and Martinus, the 2 Norwegian guys. When I talked to Joy about how is the background with this song, he said it started with an idea. He said, I had an idea about making something big. I didn't have the words, I just had an idea. So the idea was in the center. So if you have these 3 ways of doing songs, the first is to promote the band, the second is to promote the song, the third is actually to promote an artistic idea. And that's what Joy Deb is doing with his collaborative team, where of course Linnea and they worked together for many years. So we have different production models, and I would say the way Joy Deb is working and Linnea Deb, that's very close to say, the Renaissance person in music, where you can do more or less everything. Eurovision is important, but it's not the only path for them to walk.
So, Nanne, how are you approaching your Melodifestivalen attempts? Are you also now tending to work more in a collaborative way, or do you prefer to pin your songs yourself?
Me and Peter are mainly writing our songs, whether it's for me or for One More Time. When I'm writing for me, then I start writing myself, and when we write for One More Time, then Peter starts working on the music, and but we always collaborate together. I've attended a few songwriting camps, and I realized that call me old-fashioned, as Dame Edna said, but it doesn't really work for me, because I get quite stressed, since it's always that you get together with some people, you write one song for one day, and then you switch to a new team and a new song the next day, and I go like, whoa! To me, it's like a handcraft, and because I need time to do. Of course, afterwards, everyone, they start working on the songs properly, but I feel like, okay, today we really have to make it. Okay, who are we going to write to? We're going to write for this artist. Okay. And I get stressed to know, because if I want to write, sometimes the song can turn up very quickly, and sometimes it can take weeks, take months. So, and I'm so used to working that way, and I'm so impressed by Linnea Deb and all of those, like I've been working with Linnea Deb, and she's absolutely fantastic, because she gets new ideas very quickly, and she always gets good ideas. Because they are another generation of how to write, but I've tried a few and realized it's not my cup of tea. But I like writing together with others, but I need the time and to just do one song, and then the next another, and then the next another. Because you have to work efficiently when you are at those songwriting camps, and so nowadays I turn down requests for that. But if I get requests to co-write, and we say, okay, we see if we get something together today, or we meet up in a couple of days again, and that's how I love to work. And but I'm really impressed, because the songwriting camps have actually, the people who are working with it, they are so professional to work that way, and to really create art for the artists that they are. But we need, both me and Peter, we need the time. Peter has tried a songwriting camp once as well, and he felt also going like, no, we're going to write you, no. But I think they are brilliant who are doing that. They are fantastic. I wish I could have worked that way, but I can't.
I like to add on that there are more songwriting camps, that there are good songs written in those songwriting camps. I guess what you are saying is more if you got good partners to write with, stick with them. And that works. And I think that is very important, because in Sweden we have a population of 10 million people. Around 1% of them are members of the Swedish copyright organization STIM for songwriters and lyricists. That's almost as many as there were members of Stasi in Eastern Germany back in the days. So you see, and that is kind of interesting. Very few of them make money out of this. Very, very few make success. There are about 500 Swedish artists who had more than 100 million listenings on Spotify, and very few of them really making money out of doing that. But there are lots of songs being written in these songwriting camps that are forgotten.
I think, sorry, I just think most of the...
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nanne, please continue, Nanne.
No, I just say, yeah, like most songs that are written in camps. I mean, most songs that songwriters write, they never see the light of day. So I think that's also a lot of that's the songwriting camps and co-writes is also a way of becoming a songwriter in terms of learning the craft and learning the practice. So I think, yeah, it's this a massive amount of songs that are being written in camps. But a lot of people in the industry that I've talked to also talk about camps as sometimes, you have Eurovision camps and you have them for specific artists, and that might increase the chances for something to come out of that specific camp. But very often it's also thought of as a way of training or, learning how to practice songwriting, but also as an incredibly important networking arena. Like you said, like you might meet someone that you like to work with, and then that's someone to pick up on later because you know that you're going to do good stuff together. And we know, like, I mean, Nana, you're not the only one who has this close connection to one person. I mean, many of the big, also Swedish, we talk about Swedish teams. So I think it's also about today, I mean, it's very much about networking and making connections, and then as we see in the Eurovision, that it's an international thing that people do. I mean, Eurovision might be one arena for getting your songs out there, but a lot of these, there might be songwriters from different nations that are representing this in this country. And I think so camps are one part of this, and then there's a lot of people who also working just co-writing and setting up sessions themselves or through their publishers, much in the way that you do, Nana. They might not have that urgency that the camp has, because the camp has a lot of different functions, I think.
Yes, and I believe if we look 1 or 2 years ahead with the AI apps coming now on songwriting, you will probably have apps doing just as good music as is produced at many of these camps. With this being said, if it's not by coincidence that Linnea Deb and Joy Deb and their colleagues are in the festival year after year after year, it's one very good reason why they are. It's because they're very good. Same with Max Martin, because he's very good, that's why. And why you are an artist, Nana, after all these years, that's because it's good. You're good. You're doing good stuff. That's the only explanation, because there's somebody who's willing to pay a ticket to go to one of your concerts, and so on and so on. That's that's actually how it works. And if we do an analysis of all these songwriters, we can see that some names are more or less chunked together. These are these strong teams. But also that, for example, if you take the song Främling that was written by Lasse Holm, Monica Forsberg got the credits for the lyrics. He did most of the lyrics, but she made good lyrics out of his bad lyrics. So there are different ways of doing co-writes, really. Sometimes the co-writer is somebody who's changing the arrangement in a way that the song really works. I have many examples of this. So it's not always that you start with in the morning without anything, but more than, like Nanne said, that you have an idea, we should write for this writer. That doesn't make good songs that often. In most cases, I would say, if you have really strong songs that are winners, for example, in Eurovision, it starts with an idea like the one I talked about with Joy Deb. Can I please tell one more important thing? How the co-write, because the two guys, Martin and Matthias, they are co-writers on that song. They did not have the idea. It was Joy Deb who had the idea. He and Linnea, they made a demo with lyrics, fake lyrics, and he said, "Motion, ocean." You can't really hear the lyrics. I'll listen to the demo. Then the song was originally, he had another artist in mind, but the twins came to the studio and listened to the song. There he did one very clever thing, watch and learn. He played the song without any vocals. They were singing the local vocals live in the studio when the guys heard it, out loud as hell. So they started singing with it. And that's like when you go to and buy a car, the car salesman, he asks you, what color do you like of your cars? And stuff like that. He doesn't ask you, do you want this song or do you not want this song? No, sorry, we don't have any red cars, but you can look in the catalog here. And then by the end of the day, you bought the car. he made them contribute to the song with lyrics and melody lines. So they are copyright holders of the song. And this year's song, they are also included in the songwriting team. So that's how collaboration works. It's not that you meet in the morning and you have no idea. It's often that one brings in the good idea when it's a good co-write.
Okay, so I would like to ask a question to the panel, but starting with Ingrid, for instance. I'm curious to know whether the Eurovision Song Festival is still nurturing the music recording industry. Now, what do I mean by this? Comparing to what was, I don't know, 20 years ago, there was a lot of work in recording studios when it came to the national selections and then the Eurovision. At this point, at least in Portugal, what happens is that the Portuguese network channel, the national channel RTP, attributes a sum of money to each of the songs that are selected, and then each contestant produces its own song, maybe at home, maybe in a recording studio, a small, we don't know. They just present the final work. Whereas where I was actively working in the recording industry, we occupied the studios that were available in Lisbon, and mostly the bigger ones. So my question relates really to the effect that nowadays music production has in the music recording industry. Well, in Sweden, in Norway, I'm curious. So, would you like to answer first, Ingrid?
I'm going to need the question again. I'm sorry. The sound is a little muffled.
Did you understand part of it?
It has to do with the music,
Yeah,
music production and the industry.
I'll summarize it. Do you understand me like this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how is the Eurovision Song Contest nurturing the recording industry in terms of occupation of studios? And I was comparing to what happens in Portugal. In Portugal, the national channel attributes a sum of money to each contestant, and they only present the final work. So we don't know whether they go to a small studio, a large studio, or they record it at home. And whereas where I was, when I was working, we occupied the largest studios that there were available in Lisbon. So I'm curious to know the effect of the Eurovision at this point in the recording industry, specifically, studios.
Right. I'm not sure it has that big of an effect immediately. I think the national broadcaster in Norway plays a really big part in the selection and the production and of songs. I think it's you know, for the people doing camps, we have a lot of Eurovision camps who are, you know, aimed towards that. But when it comes to recording and these things, I think a lot of people, I mean, they would do it in the studio of the producer or the producer songwriter who is involved, probably, or with the national broadcasters. So of course there's this huge, they've been downplaying the live show a little bit nationally in Norway the later years, but I think that's maybe where it's more present as a, you know, a place of work or offering opportunities. But I think it's really, really tied into the national broadcaster still in Norway.
Jan-Olof, do you have any?
Well, when it comes to studios and stuff like that, I assume, Nanna, that you're working in your own studio with producing your music.
It's different, and I don't think really it doesn't matter if you're recording in a big studio or in a home studio, actually, because you have so many possibilities and it also depends on how you want to produce it. If it's real drums, someone playing drums, or if you're having this drum machine in the computer, that then you can create most things in a very, you could even create it in a wardrobe. You know what I mean? So and I think maybe that's also why Sweden has been so creative when it comes to music, because we had in a very early stage the possibilities of a lot of support in the community all around in Sweden for teenagers to be able to start up rehearse places where you could rehearse with the band, and you could get you had this kind of educations, but it wasn't in school, but where you could get help to start learning about music programming and things like that. I think you can record it just whenever, depending on what you are looking for.
But
I don't know if that gives you an answer to it, because I couldn't really hear the questions, so because it's very far away.
Yeah,
put up the maximum volume.
but I think you give part of the answer. But the big question is, how important is Melodiefestivalen for you as a music producer? How much of your income does it produce in 1 year? When I see that in past years, 20% or more of the year-end charts, of the top 20 of the year-end charts, were made up only by Melodiefestivalen songs. Is this a piece of cake that you as a producer absolutely wants to take?
Of course, it has a big effect on the Swedish music life since Melodifestivalen has become so big, and it goes on for 6 weeks, and so all spring the charts are ruled by those, and that has made it much harder for other artists to release and try to enter the charts, because it's so focused on the Melodifestivalen. And therefore, I'm very happy that I didn't start now as an artist, that I have almost 40 years as an artist. That makes me, I'm not dependent anymore like we were in the 80s or in the 90s to make new hits. Today I feel very humble about having such fully scheduled year after year now, and I'm not depending on whether I want to release any music at all, or if and that's a very as I said, I feel very humble about it, because I can feel for all of the new artists who maybe attend Melodifestivalen once, but then if you're not there again, it can be quite hard to make new hits. And therefore also in the Swedish music, when it comes to releasing music in Sweden, most artists focus on releasing in the autumn, so that's when everyone else goes like, okay, let's release now, August, September, October, November, December, and then goes, okay, now it's Melodifestivalen. So it has changed the possibility, but I mean, that's life, and that's how it is with most things. When internet came, and it changed different things also, so it just, that's how life is. And as I said, I feel very humble and lucky to have been able to participate so many times, because without Melodifestivalen I would not have been where I am today as an artist.
I do have here in front of me the stream account for the top 2,000 Swedish artists. And you can say in the top, Avicii in the top, Sara Larsson, Tove Lo, ABBA, Lasse, and so on. For the Melody Festival, you find some of those who don't make it among the 2,000 most streamed. So that's a fact. Then that means that they make quite a low income from comparative to record sales. That's really low. Radio play can be a bit more, but in streaming, very low probably. On the other hand, you can find some artists who've been on, like now they've been on year after year after year. You can find them on this list. So the income for the industry is diverse. For some, very high. For most, very low.
So we have 5 minutes left, and I think we have lots of questions in the public. Sophia, may you just take over the microphone so that people can address our panelists.
Who want to be the first?
I can ask a question to the panel. One of the aspects that you discussed briefly was about how it's more and more common now for collaborative songwriting. I wonder if that's because the importance of the music industry means that there's more of a security and a safety net to also have as many hands on each piece of art and song as possible, so that the end product that ends up coming out, it's a more of a guarantee of professionalism. Irving mentioned, of course, Croatia's song this year is the only soloist in the Eurovision Song Contest. It wasn't in the original list in Croatia because it's a more of a risk-taking entry in that sense. And the Swedish pop industry is so established, it can't be seen to fail.
Yes and no. You got a point there. So if in the classical music you don't hear about the symphony made by Mozart and Haydn, that didn't happen back in the days. But in operettas and musicals, not at least in musicals, there are collaborations. It's not only in Sweden we see collaborations. And in folk music you have versions of different songs popping up that sounds kind of similar. So I think this takes some time to discuss really, but very much about the collaboration is about how copyright is measured, how you get paid for your work. For example, if you mix a song, Mikael Ilbert, for example, one Swedish good mixer who works in Berlin, if I hire him to mix a song, I pay him by day. That's how it works. Unless I say, you will also have a copyright on the song. Maybe that makes him put some more effort to it. Now he is very, very good. He's one of the best in the world. So if he accepts the job, he will do a good job anyway. But that explains quite a lot how copyright works really. And it's the idea with copyright that if I start with some of the old artists, by the way, I'm not looking at Nanne now, but some other artists who've been quite popular, they can come to the studio. I have not experienced this myself, but some of my colleagues, they come to the studio with a very brief idea and then work collaborative. And by the end of the day, thank you very much for helping me with the songs. I will consider to give you some copyrights. They got none. They got paid by day. The next day, the group will not cooperate as well. So the idea with sharing copyrights is there's one team, I won't mention the names, but it's very interesting, where they're a group of 4 guys. When one of them is out of work that day because he's home with sick children, he still got the copyright because he was supposed to be there. And that is a way of making sure that everyone brings the best to the table every time. So yes, I would say it's a bit of making sure that everybody contributes in the very best, and that's a way of sharing copyright. One other thing that I think Nanne mentioned, that the idea of starting in the morning, doing one song and doing next one, that is seldom a success story. If you take Martin Sandberg, Max Martin, I interviewed him some time ago, and we talked quite long, and he said he can't work with more than one song at a time. So he starts one song and he finished working with it. He doesn't do anything else. And those who do that often succeed quite well. Those who jump around between different songs all the time don't know really where to put their effort. This is the same with many authors. For example, one Swedish author, Jan Guillou, who's a very successful Swedish writer, he's doing exactly the same. When he works on a book, he works with nothing else at the time. I know many academics who works with 15 articles in the same time, and they never finish one of them. So that's
Yeah, they never finish one. Unfortunately, we have to finish this wonderful and interesting session. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Nanne.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan Olaf. And we will be back after a coffee break in 15 minutes. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, you will listen to the wonderful recap of our pianist Korjun. He's doing special piano versions of the second semi-final of this Eurovision Song Contest. Stay tuned and enjoy.
So hello everybody again, and thank you for staying with us. So now we're starting our third impulse for today, and for that we will have the presence of Professor Linus Johansson on this stage. So I hope I pronounced it well again.
Sure.
So Professor Linus Johansson is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Music and Arts, Linnaeus University. His teaching involves musicology, music pedagogy, and artistic music studies. So Johansson's research primarily focuses on political music videos from the 1980s, but also includes earlier periods of time. So please welcome Professor Linus Johansson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I should mention I'm not a professor in the Swedish terminology.
Sorry.
No,
I am sorry.
But in English, I think you can say that. So thank you very much for that introduction. I'll just start right away into this amazing field of the progressive leftist movement and the alternative festival. So in February 1974, ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest. We all know this. We also know that it was therefore Sweden's turn to arrange the festival in 1975. However, what some of you may not know as much about is that highly active leftist movement objected to the event and arranged an alternative festival that celebrated cultural diversity instead of competition between nations. The so-called progressive music movement had since the start some things in common with the hippie movement, but towards the end of the decade there were also connections to the first generation of Swedish punks and in effect the upcoming underground scenes associated with the subculture. DIY culture, fanzines, non-profit media and record companies, political debates and activism, and so on, all belonged in the movement. There are plenty of stories about it, and although many make sense, they don't all tell the same version. This leads to a dilemma on my part. While some of you, dear international participators, may not have heard about the movement at all, a few of the senior experts who have already spoken at this conference were actually there when this all happened. As I am too young to remember much of the decade, I look forward to being corrected by you during the Q&A. At least I saw the children's shows. Right. So, what was this peculiar movement? It is commonly said that it started around 1970 with a series of music festivals held at Gärdet in Stockholm. The word progressive was chosen by the movement as a reference to political ideals. In contrast, the contemporary British wave of progressive rock was labeled such due to musical qualities. The political ideas of the movement were rooted in working class ideologies and the idea about alternative culture to replace the worn-out cliches of the mainstream. Håkan Lager has described the movement as 50% music and 50% politics. It should be noted that politics and music could not entirely be separated, but rather overlapped on an ideological scale. From both perspectives, capitalism was the enemy, and thus it was crucial for artists to belong to approved, autonomous record companies within the movement. It is notable that some bands were also fringe theater groups. All artists sang in Swedish, but this was not a nationalistic ideology. Remember the socialist dogma: proletarians of all countries unite. Furthermore, it was rather a step away from Anglophone dominance and a way to invite all listeners, not just the English-speaking. Like the hippies, the progressive movement was against the Vietnam War and was for the people. The journal Musikens Makt, The Power of Music, was published during a 7-year period and was discontinued around 1980. a sign of the movement reaching the end of its era. But why did it disappear? Had it achieved its goals, or was it eventually absorbed by the mainstream? I shall return to the journal Musikens Makt and the alternative festivals, but first a short summary of the cultural and political ideologies of the movement and some of its social aspects. There were both cultural and political activities in the movement, but there was no total consensus regarding which culture and politics to support. Common ideologies were communism, libertarian socialism, and alternative culture. Artists were defined in terms of which record companies made their albums, and activists by cause, but the audience was more difficult to define. Activists were found among union workers, musicians, theater groups, socially engaged debaters, gig and festival arrangers, and so on. The audiences attended gigs, bought records, etc., which was crucial to any economically dependent activities within the movement. But perhaps parts of the audiences did not only buy records by artists within the movement. Did some even buy records by ABBA? You should ask yourself. The official journal of the movement was Musikens Makt, The Power of Music. This is the cover of their first issue for the price of 3 crowns, including taxes. You will note that all text is in bold uppercase letters, and the simple logo with a powerful raised fist. The balloon by the logo illustrates the inflated ego of manager and co-writer of ABBA, Stickan Andersson, mentioned in earlier presentations. The label says chief ideologist of Svensk Toppen, the Swedish top list, also mentioned earlier, which was the main hit list on publicly funded Swedish radio. Most of the picture shows an organ symbolizing the music industry, the political elite, and high culture. The title on the score is The Music of Power. And the clefs on the score are dollar signs. On the left side, we see a manifesto that is most characteristic of the ideologies of the movement. And on the right side, the contents of the issue. So the manifesto on the left side of the cover reads, "The music of power and the nonsense of the Swedish hit list grows a forest of prejudice, putting us all to sleep as passive consumers. With the power of music, we fight for a living, progressive music culture, music that activates us, expresses us, and the time we live in. We will create a music culture for everyone." The machinery of the organ measures popularity and sales. It is played by a white tie organist, and the stops are marked lies, nonsense, idiotic, and so on. While flags are waving, bombs are dropping, and money is falling out of the organ. There is much more to say about the picture and the cover. People representing 2 of the most influential record companies of the movement, Silence and Musiknätet Vaxholm. Let's see. Musiknätet Vaxholm are poking holes in speech balloons containing romantic cliches. In the lower corners, bands are portrayed as activists preparing for the revolution. Among the most remembered such bands, I should mention Blå Tåget from Stockholm, Hoola Bandoola Band from here in Malmö, and Nationalteatern from Gothenburg. The table of the contents mentions artists and bands within the movement such as Mikael Wiehe, Trädgräs och Stenar, and Kjell Höglund. But it also draws attention to the 3rd generation of rock, including glam bands that were far from alternative when it came to which record labels they belonged to. A not very surprising article critiques discotheque culture, while others draw attention to concerts and festivals arranged within the movement. Feminist perspectives also appear, and the most recurrent theme throughout the history of the journal is the educational sections that teach you how to build your own instruments and how to play them. So where was ABBA in all this? Let's have a look. This is a poster from a journal called Just That. It displays a group standing in front of a Swedish flag wrapped in aluminum foil. Their private parts, the dangerous parts, are covered in a shimmering light. Here are some assorted images from various sources for further reference. You will recognize the big day in 1974, up to the left, with a seemingly oversized Napoleon conductor. Next to it, an image that suggests that the connection between Svensktoppen, the Eurovision Song Contest, and American cultural imperialism may not be entirely far-fetched. It is notable that the poster journal was published during almost the exact same time as Musikens Makt. It was founded, though, by a former porn publisher and mostly contained images and very little text, quite the opposite of Musikens Makt. This special issue from 1977 features only ABBA, celebrating their physical appearances. To me, however, they look more like characters from Astrid Lindgren stories. Down to the right is Skorpan and Jonathan, the brothers Lionheart, and up to the right, the unmistakable Pippi Långstrump. It is up to you to decide if Frida is the monkey on Pippi's shoulder, or perhaps the horse standing on the veranda in the background, Lilla Gubben. I'll let that sink in for a few seconds. There. Now, let's go back to 1975 and the protesting against the Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden. So came February of 1975. Voices from the movement demanded the Eurovision Championships Schlager to be cancelled. The Musikens Makt journal cover and a matching poster showed ABBA caricatures in front of the cameras, also seen on a TV screen to the left of the closest camera. The audience holds up signs saying, "Boo for the European Championships in music, stop prejudice, flash out the Schlager hype," and so on. As history stands to confirm, the contest still happened, so the movement arranged their own alternative festival. This included the international context, but without the competition between nations. The whole alternative festival lasted about a week with countless performances in a large tent. In this picture, we see Sillstrypan, the herring strangler, who performed what is widely regarded as the official theme song of the alternative festival. The mix of Swedish and English in the title, doing the omoralisk Schlagerfestival, doing the immoral Eurovision Song Contest, is of course ironic, but also references the Anglophone dominance previously mentioned. Sillstrypan mentions an authentic samplerfizer, mockingly referencing the machine of the cultural industries. The mentioning of rattling jewelry is most likely a quote from the Beatles' Royal Variety performance in 1963, when John Lennon told the people in the cheaper seats to clap their hands while the rest could just rattle their jewelry. The herring strangler also mentions the Spanish sun, referring to Franco's dictatorship. ABBA is described as wearing plastic clothing, as dead as cans of herring. This sets his French nerves on fire, reminding the listener of earlier events in the history of class struggle. and that the same revolutionary spirit lives on today, or back then. Notably, Stickan Andersson is said to produce romanticism, and then he gets a kick, presumably in his rear end. Let's listen to the simple vocal and electric guitar arrangement of the first verse and chorus before the whole band comes in. I will show you a translation of the entire lyrics, although it's partly summary, just so you know.
Får jag för er presentera the one and only sillstrypan från Göteborg. Eller som spanjoren säger, garrotta di anchovis. Sjungandes till sin äkta semperfejser, doing the omoralisk schlagerfestival. I kören hörs de brömmande busarna Björnligan och Gondolen. As a one, as a two, as a one, two, three, four.
De rasslar av juveler och glittrar av guld. De sjunger om den spanska solen. Men garrotteringar och mord, det skiter de i och svänger på fascistkärringkjolen. Och här kommer ABBA i kläder och plast, lika döda som sillkonserver. De skiter också i allt, vill göra snabba stål. Det pyr i mina franska nerver. Doing the omoralisk schlagerfestival. Yes, doing the omoralisk schlagerfestival. Ja, kom igen gubbar!
And that's where I stop this little sample. It kind of hurts to stop it right there. If you ever want to choose an example of how music could sound in the 70s, I think this is a pretty good choice. Right. So, what happened during the Alternative Festival week? I will show you two clips, one of the Master of Ceremonies and one of the Herring Strangler himself performing the final act. The TV special included performances within several genres in different languages and different traditions. But the point was not that they were all from other countries, but that no one won. The hosts, recognized from children's show Ville, Valle and Victor, argued that music consists of emotions, thus you cannot compete in it. A satire spot about the ideologies behind the Eurovision Song Contest appeared around halfway through the show. Karin Falk, the host of the actual competition, was parodied by a drag queen with a much similar smile, although their hair and dresses were less similar. Perhaps the fringe theatre group's props divisions run low on wigs and evening gowns. After a welcoming introduction in English, French, German, Spanish and Swedish, the cross-dressing Master of Ceremonies proceeds to reveal the truth about the Eurovision Song Contest. The real purpose of the competition is to distract audiences by seemingly making trouble and injustice disappear, replacing them with romantic clichés by the likes of Stickan Andersson. They really hated him. Also, this description of the Schlager displays features of post-Marxist social critiques, not least associated with Theodor Adorno and the Frankfurt School, who referred to this as a form of false consciousness. One cannot help to wonder what a real consciousness would be like. I will not bother the non-Swedish speaking listeners with the whole introductory speech, but here's the first minute. Let's see. There.
C'est un grand plaisir pour nous à vous souhaiter bienvenue au Festival de Mélodie Grand Prix 1975. Bienvenue à Stockholm. Meine Damen und Herren, es ist uns eine große Freude, Ihnen willkommen zu heißen zum Melodie Grand Prix Festival 1975 und willkommen nach Stockholm.
and so on. Let's see. So, the final performance during the Schlager Festival was performed by Sillstrypan. He wears a trench coat and a British flat cap. He plays without a pick, using radio parts as an amplifier, which is held to a microphone by a stagehand. Before he begins, the three children's show hosts, Ville and Victor, inform the audience that the TV special is coming to an end. But they also encourage the audience to contribute to alternative culture all over the world, even on the moon, Mars, and the whole universe. So this is the final example. So, in summary, the movement was highly productive during the 1970s with musicians, political activists, record companies, media, festival arrangers, children's shows hosts, etc. The reaction regarding the Eurovision Song Contest was organized in a both cultural and political sense. And even though they did not manage to stop the competition, they created an alternative. In doing so, they also told a story about the Eurovision Song Contest that many have sadly forgotten. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Linus, for a very interesting presentation. And now we have 5 minutes for Q&A. So if anyone wants to ask a question, I have one. I certainly have one, and it's probably a short one. I don't know, but it seemed quite odd, and you actually made a comment that Macht Music, or Music Macht, the magazine, I mean, they had this interview with David Bowie, Alice Cooper, and somebody else, which were at the time personalities of the music industry, clearly. So is this a clear case of form over content? Because was it just because of what they, well, of the way they acted more than what they actually represented? I was curious.
Yeah, I think a lot of these artists outside of the movement, the activists had like mixed feelings for them, and if you ask some, they'd say one thing, others say another. But you can also think about it as there's a difference between listening to music from the USA and to celebrate the nation of USA, right? And also some of these artists would challenge gender norms, for example. So there can be a bit of a rebellion also in that.
Transgression there.
Yes, I mentioned John Lennon as well. Much of their ideology does resonate in stuff that he said, but also other things did not. For example, the movement wasn't officially open to drug use, right? And also John Lennon married Yoko Ono, and you know that's kind of bourgeois to get married and go to psychotherapy and so on. So they had these hate-love relationships with these mainstream artists.
Thank you, very interesting. So any questions?
Maybe I said it all.
Okay, so Jan-Olof.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. What happened to these people after the festival? Have you followed them?
Well, some artists made solo careers. Like, well, Kjell Höglund, I mentioned him. He was already a solo artist, but he continued. I mentioned Mikael Wiehe and Björn Afzelius of Hoola Bandoola Band. They did solo careers as well, right? And Gudi Braudan reformed in 1986. So those would be the musicians. But then I would say also the record companies are pretty important. I just suggested that there's a connection here to the later underground movement and the punk generation. So early Swedish punk bands, some would release albums on the record labels that were created within the movement as these approved autonomous record companies. So it's also the record companies, and then there are some people who went on to be TV stars. Swedish people here might recognize the name Robert Aschberg. He was in a band called Envoys, and so on. Some went into debate, and I would say a lot of them continued in one way or another but not in the same DIY non-profit context necessarily. Was that an okay answer? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one more, just a reflection. Back in '75, that year I started really rehearsing and started gigging. I started gigging when I was 13, 14 years old, quite young. At that time, and the years coming, in Sweden, we could play with a band on a manifestation against imperialism or something like that, against something, starting with Johnny B. Good by Chuck Berry. And that's kind of interesting. And after that, playing Smoke on the Water and others. So the music being played was nothing. Nobody cared in the band about the political agenda. It was just another gig. And I think that's interesting. In Leipzig, the symphony orchestra in Leipzig is the oldest radio orchestra in the world, and there's an interesting documentary about that if you find it, where they say we lived under 3 different political systems: the Nazis, the East German politics, and today, and also before that, without a problem. We just changed. Monday morning we started rushing out the music, and so the guys in the band, probably some of the artists politically informed, most of them just another gig maybe.
Yes, absolutely, and that's why I think of it as the political sphere and the culture sphere kind of overlapping. But in one end you have the communist, Marxist, Leninist, revolutionary federation, right? And on the other side you have the people who arrange gigs. That's they concentrate on alternative culture, not politics in that way. So yes, I would say you can see the extremes, but they also overlap in my opinion.
So thank you very much, Linus, and let's have a big round of applause for Linus, because we have to go on with our program. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Extremely interesting presentation. And we're moving on now to a panel, which will be led by Ben Robertson. So, with a decade of experience in covering Eurovision for Eurovision Song Contest Insight, which is, by the way, our media partner, Ben has attended 25 national finals and over a dozen Eurovision Song Contests with press accreditation. His focus has been on statistics, as evidenced by his written contributions and podcasts about running order bias. So his academic background includes a degree in physics and earth sciences from Durham University, and he relocated to Stockholm 10 years ago after completing his teaching qualification. Currently, he's working as a project coordinator for a local sports club. So let's give a warm welcome to Ben Robertson. Thank you very much, Ben.
We are hearing good? Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ben Robertson. I'm here to talk about a concept that I'm calling the Swedification of the Eurovision Song Contest. We've heard today about the Swedish music industry in detail, but this is about the actual Eurovision Song Contest itself. Actually talking about how the song contest of today is now more Swedish in style and in substance. I'll talk very briefly about 7-8 minutes, and then I've got a panel of experts to come and help me explain this concept. I'm starting this journey off in the year 2000, the new millennium of the Eurovision Song Contest, and a transformative Eurovision. A Eurovision for the first time with a webcast, with a CD you could buy. In the Globen Arena in Stockholm, one of the biggest contests at the time. And an audience that wasn't just invited people, it was for the public. It was, as we say in Sweden, a folkfest, a party for everybody. LED screens for the first time on the stage. And also this heart-shaped logo, iconic to this day, and was very almost the full Eurovision logo instead of the heart when that was chosen in 2004. It was bold for public broadcasting to take these kind of steps. But as we'll see, when SVT get their hands on the song contest, they are bold with it. I think one reason they are bold is because, as we learned today, Melodifestivalen, the national selection show for Sweden, became this huge multi-week format in 2002. It moved to 6 weeks of entertainment that hit all the major towns around the country, bringing public service broadcasting to the people. And that show in 2002 was really big for 2 reasons. It was a battle, as Christer Björkman described, who is this year's contest producer, between the traditional listeners, the kind of dance band songs that Melfest was known for at the time, and the reformisternas, those bringing commercial new music to the contest, like Mendes, who was second, and Aphrodite, who was first. Melfest was becoming popular music, finally. But what they didn't expect was for the 6-week show, the media latched onto storylines more than just the music. It became, as Christer Björkman described, a genuine reality show. It brought drama, it brought suspense, it brought media headlines week after week, which contributed to the contest growth. But more than that, it's the existence that Melodifestivalen exists that offers these experiences that no other broadcaster has. Other broadcasters have tried after Melodifestivalen had the 6-week program to have multi-week shows around the country. They don't exist anymore. It's only Sweden that truly has the industry of the song contest. Huge productions, thousands of people coming week in, week out. On the left there is Svantis Oxelius, the mastermind to make the Melodifestivalen expansion and executive producer for 2000 with the Eurovision in Stockholm. 2003 became executive supervisor for Eurovision. Christer Björkman I've already mentioned. He was tasked with choosing the songs for that 2002 edition and then became artist coordinator full-time from 2003 onwards. People like Christer Björkman and many others SVT have can work full-time in the Eurovision Song Contest. Not many broadcasters have people who are able to deliver that. Melodifestivalen creates an industry of experts. And we knew that SVT was good at Eurovision, but it took a while for a victory. And they were waiting for a victory for so long. Martin Österdahl, now executive supervisor for the entire Eurovision, was there in 2013. He had said that most of the content for that edition was created over the summer, as soon as Loreen won, because SVT was ready, and they gave the contest a higher purpose. More structural changes to Eurovision than we have seen this decade. The parade of nations, the standing audience, a running order that the producer, and it was Christer Björkman, produced. But arguably more important was the We Are One, giving the song contest a higher purpose, writing about what it is that Eurovision's all about. Martin Österdahl said this: it's about embracing the unique wealth of the people, culture, music and festivity that exist within Europe. Learning about other cultures and building bridges in Europe is very important. It was important in the 50s after 2 world wars had brought the continent to its knees, and it's also important today. Those words influenced not just 2013, but every Eurovision Song Contest thereafter. And they have stuck with every broadcaster that's gone along. Building bridges remember was the slogan for 2015 in Vienna. But Sweden won again. So the contest came to Stockholm. Stockholm, for me, cemented this strong SVT vision. It made sure these things were locked in forever. We have a couple more changes. Lights across all of Globen, making it brighter, seeing the audience more clearly than ever before. The voting sequence, that was the most exciting we have ever had in Eurovision. Concept came straight from Melodifestivalen. Come together and we are one. This higher purpose is brought in people. We saw Justin Timberlake on the stage to really show off the Swedish music industry at its peak with one of the world's best artists there. And that show was so successful, it won the Rose d'Or for Best TV Show on the continent that year. This is arguably the pinnacle of the Eurovision Song Contest. So after that, it took a few years before Sweden won again. We tried, we got very close. But then you could see all this industry that Sweden had built, its reputation as a stronghold of Eurovision spreading across the continent. This here map on the left-hand side shows songs from 2016 to 2021 with Swedish songwriters. All over Europe, many times. Top quality production comes with Swedish teams. And that is well known now. Up on the top right, you have Ola Melsig there. Worked on many Eurovision Song Contests behind the scenes. Him and many others went out to help the Song Contest in 2017 in Kiev, when, quite openly, there was a crisis to make sure that Eurovision Song Contest actually worked. Actually came to be a song contest of 3 shows. There were things organized that year that were finished the hour before the show was broadcast. And in times of crisis, who did EBU go to? Expert Swedes who do this 6 weeks in a row in February and March. And I put on Eleni Fuera there. We saw her last night open the semi-final. Song with Swedish influence. Visual, creative production by Swedish influence, one of many. The Swedes know how to create Eurovision in ways that so many people look for constantly. And we're here now for Malmö 2024. This is the end product that I think we've got to have an SVT Eurovision. Our key words that SVT had for this year were celebrate, participate, rediscover, and entertain. And on the surface, there's not much has changed. There's a couple of things there that I think just elevate SVT's vision. Our stage is stunning. We expect no less. But notice how the audience are fully around that stage now. You see more of the audience again than ever before. You get more interaction with what SVT have called the best audience in the world on the stage. And we amplify some things that SVT are known for. We now have producers in control of even more of the running order than ever before. You are now able to vote in the rest of the world before the show starts. On Saturday, you can vote during the show. More engagement, more participation in the audience, more emotions being felt. And of course, we call this United by Music, now a permanent slogan for the Eurovision Song Contest. And SVT described how Liverpool and the BBC perfected it. And we've gone full circle, so every other broadcaster is creating these big visions. That was what SVT wanted in 2013. Every other broadcaster is buying in to the Swedification of the Eurovision Song Contest. And that Swedish product, I think many broadcasters want to be a part of. That's what I want to say about this. Today I've got 3 people I would like to sit up here and be a panel with me. I've got some questions. Hope you have some questions too. I'd like to invite Ken Olsson from QX and Slagverfilerna to come up, alongside James Rowe from the Eurotrip podcast and Melfest Monday, and Benke Riedman, choreographer and creative producer for a plethora of Eurovision songs and interval acts. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. I've given a quick, brief intro there to Sweden's influence on the Eurovision Song Contest. Is there anything here that any of you can share about how Sweden's got itself into this position? Is there anything to add to the story about where why this is the country that is regarded by so many as numero uno for Eurovision?
I mean, the love for this contest is extreme. It's like rooted in the genes in Sweden, and I think it's interesting with the thing that we talked about before, because in the 70s, which I was a bit too small to experience, it was so shameful. And as we saw, I've seen so many things about this contest 75, like the separate contest, but nothing about the Eurovision that we actually did in 75. So by then, no proud at all. Then the 80s came, Carola came, it changed the genes here, and now people here live for it. And we can't forget about like why Melodifestivalen is that we live in a very, very dark and cold country that needs something in the winter, and that's why these circles are traveling around, and that's why it's become so big. So I think it's like a love for it, a love-hate relationship that people just grow up with it inside themselves. So it's more than a TV show for some reason.
Yeah, maybe I can add something about, because I was part of the 2013 and 16, and I think there's something with the Swedish, organization that we are pretty good at, and I mean, speaking for myself, I just wanted to be a part of a professional team and do profound work. I wasn't that interested in like Melodifestivalen when I was a kid or anything, but just the fact that it became more and more professional and doing like really nice TV entertainment. I wanted to be a part of that, and many of my colleagues wanted to be a part of that. And I think that's a part of it. Like we do like hard work, and we worked so much for 16 that I almost like got rashes now when I come back here and see it.
Is there anything about 16 that you want to elaborate on there? Because what I noticed from SVT's, and I discussed with SVT about the vision for Eurovision, they think about this, we think at the time that we are one and come together and so forth, but they try and look for the greater purpose and tell a story that we know Eurovision has. People are at a conference like this today, but SVT want to very much try and tell that story of the productions that they produce for the song contest.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I work in theater, and what you need to do then is like you need to have the core element. So we worked very much with discussions, and the whole team, everyone from light designers to people that does logos and stuff like that. So we are creating everything from one core, and there was so much discussions about what we want to do. So everything is, I think we all have the same vision, and what's great with that is of course that SVT puts up with the money to employ people to have the time to work that hard. But I think that's like one reason that, I mean, you necessarily don't see it, but you can feel that it's, it sits together, it's one product from everything, So that's one thing I think.
I react as well. I think the Grey People interval act in particular is one moment of something that's arguably more important than the song contest, but putting that forward onto such a platform, because the song contest should be art at its most important. Yeah? James, why would somebody like yourself, you're not based in Sweden, but you've seen that Melfest is worthy of its own interaction with the Melfest Monday and so forth that you produce. Why Sweden?
I think it's just the strength of Melodifestivalen as a whole, especially within the Eurovision community, I think with so many national finals on show across Europe for fans to watch, I don't think there's any other that really has the power that Melfest has. And when I get to speak to some of the artists every year that I do, I'm lucky to chat to them. They're telling me that they want to take part in Melfest. It's not necessarily they want to take part in Eurovision. Whereas when I chat to an artist from, I don't know, let's say Norway or Ukraine or wherever, they say they want to take part in Eurovision. So I think it's the growth of Melfest and the strength that Melfest has that really shows what Sweden can offer. Whereas other countries, the goal is Eurovision. It's a different beast to other countries.
Is that something, Benke, you can possibly react on? Because in the last couple of years, you've been working for the Finnish broadcast and producing the stage shows for their competition. And we could argue that Finland is a country on the resurgence in the Eurovision Song Contest. Certainly got a lot more domestic hits from what Finland's producing now than we can maybe look back a decade ago. Are the same discussions there? Are people aiming for just to be on Finnish television that night? Is it the goal to go to Eurovision? Because in Sweden, if you get into the final, you get a hit out of that, that's success almost regardless of going to Eurovision.
Yeah, but I think like I've worked for Yle Finnish Melodifestivalen for 3 years, and I know obviously they looked at Sweden, how to make it that popular. So they wanted to create a professional platform, and I think it has been on a rise now. So I think this year's, even though Windows 95 Man won, and that's like, I don't know. There are some other like great pop songs in their contest. I know there's this discussion in Finland with songwriters, like, okay, maybe we should take a step here, and put in some songs here because it's a really good platform. They feel it's like a professional level. It's cool. It's not, the geekiest competition around. So I think it's all about that, making it, look really cool and sound really cool.
And by the way, if any of the audience here do have any questions, feel free to put your hand up and I'll try and include different voices through all of this. One thing I'd like to ask everybody here is about, we can say Melodifestivalen, but maybe also what SVT do for Eurovision as well. I get asked a lot when I go and travel around different countries, but also do focus on Sweden, living here in Stockholm, about what other countries could maybe learn from Melodifestivalen and from what SVT do. Is there anything that any of you maybe could share about, hey, this is something that is, some of the great stuff that makes the Swedish competition the success that it is?
I mean, the thing that makes it, as Benke said, it's the people. And why the people get so skilled is because we're traveling around, everything looks the same every week, but you travel during the week, you build everything again, you have to solve things there, people get very, so of course, but what I think about now is like, it's time for the Melfest people to do what Benke is doing, going out and use these skills and make it something of their own. You shouldn't copy Melodifestivalen anymore. That's been done now. We've been doing that. What I think is interesting right now is where things are exploding, like Sanremo, which obviously been there forever, but it's turning, they try to reform, they look like we need to get it younger, so maybe like that's something they look at Melodifestivalen, but they do it their own thing. It's not like we're going to copy it, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to have the same format traveling around. You take the talent, you see like what your things, what your values, and then you build your own thing, and that's what I think is really interesting, and hopefully also what will influence Eurovision in the future, like these local things coming, and not just one country having the influence.
But also I think it's hard, isn't it, for other broadcasters to try and figure out what they need to do to try and up their game, because Melfest's been going for 60 odd years, and within its current guise it's been going for 20 years, and SVT have managed to really hone what Melfest should be about. And for other broadcasters, I think it's difficult for them to try and figure out what really works now that Melfest and Eurovision can be looked at as so similar. It's how do broadcasters try and do their own thing to try and then, with the aim of winning Eurovision, bringing it home to their country, and then trying to put their spin on Eurovision based on what their national final is. It's so difficult for them with how strong Melfest is and how similar they've made Eurovision in comparison.
Yeah, but I'd like to, I know it's hard, but I think it's just basically an organizational thing. Like you say, there would be the death of Eurovision if everything gets Sweden, For me, that would be super boring, because I think it's all about the expressions, like the local expressions. So you, as a viewer, you can have your favorites, but you can also have like, oh, I hate that, It's all about that, the joy of art, basically. So I think it's more like how to put it on a professional level, but then try to keep because also in Sweden it gets very like, it's kind of slim, the production, because it goes fast and people get better at it. And then it turns out that it's, okay, maybe the expressions are also like, we're almost like in a thin tunnel of expressions. So that's something for the other countries to think about, not just copying Sweden, I think.
Just quickly as well, it's the consistency of SVT as well. You know, they've got people who are employed, you know, 365 days a year to work on that. And Ben, we were talking before, weren't we, about Ireland? You know, how much manpower have they got working on their Eurovision output? They've got one person who works part-time and works on other stuff for the rest of the year, so they can't really compete, can they?
There is no more safer pair of hands than a Swedish pair of hands if they've had this Melodifestivalen upbringing, because you have to solve things week in, week out. You are producing a show that gets all this media buzz and attention constantly. That scale is the reason of Swedish dominance. We've talked about the industry and the songwriting beforehand. The marriage of all these things is the reason SVT has been so good on the scoreboard, but also so good with the actual production of Eurovision. Was there a question on the internet there?
Well, no, I have a question myself, actually. Sorry, I'm just... because the fact that SVT started using the multi-week format is because they were inspired by another national final in the 90s, and that was the Belgian national final, Eurosong 1999. And they said, we want to have that. Of course, they did it their own way, and they had, of course, and because of the Belgian system, they quickly caught on, I think, Sweden, how to do it and how to do it better than the Flemish. Married again with what you said, with the proper music industry, I think they added the missing piece to what Belgium is still looking.
I think one of the interesting things that came from 2002 wasn't just, oh, let's have a show for 6 weeks because it's cold here and songs are entertaining. It's the way that Melodifestivalen itself became like a reality show. I mean, this era is the era when shows, we mentioned Idol before today, and you saw people by the end of Swedish Idol would connect to 2 or 3 of their favourite artists who would go on and have big careers. And how many Swedish Idol participants have gone on to Eurovision Song Contest, even won it. But that connection and the way that you get a narrative throughout Melodifestivalen is one of the reasons it really generates so much success and interest, which other national finals don't have that character progression through the weeks. The one thing I would say to any broadcaster wanting inspiration from Melfest today, the one thing I think they do better than anywhere else is with engagement. The engagement of the audience to participate in an SVT show is huge. The voting numbers in Melodifestivalen are insane. And yes, you can vote on this button-bashing app for free 5 times in each show, which we might critique as a fair voting system. But SVT, I remember it was 2021, so during the pandemic, they were claiming that they had the world record for second screen engagement on like your official app and platform, because so many people, way more than anticipated, vote using that. And as soon as you engage through voting, you feel an emotional connection. You feel some sort of loyalty to the brand, to the artist. That is something that other national finals really develop to try and get people to engage and want to watch and enjoy the show. Anything else from here that we would take elsewhere?
Sorry, can I grab one of those?
It's fine. Yeah. Okay. So where does Melodifestivalen go from here? Oh, sorry. Where does Melodifestivalen go from here?
I mean, I think this is the most interesting question here, because I'm suddenly turning to something critical for something I love here. But I think everything that you talked about and all this engagement and the voting and the app and all these things, it's SVT is that's very Swedish. It's losing its soul, it's losing its heart, and we have been left with a product that's so streamlined and beautiful to watch, and it makes it hits. But I mean, if we don't have, I mean, I shouldn't, but I mean, look at the Loreen and then look at Marcus and Martinus. It's 2 mega hits in Sweden, but they are very different in like heart, soul, and these kind of things. And I think if we're going into more like that, then they need to find something else to get the heart back in the contest.
one reaction I had during Melodifestivalen this year, this might be a super nerdy Melfest, Deltavling watchers in the room here. I remember, and Ken probably know even better than me on this one, there was an act called Scarlet that took place in Melodifestivalen this year, and I understand that SVT were quite surprised at the positive reaction that that act got from the community that follows Melfest most intensely. We weren't. And if we've watched the semi-final last night, the act most comparison to that would be Bambi Fug, which I think it's second for YouTube views of all the acts last night and so forth. We weren't surprised, but SVT's so focused perhaps on that pop and radio product that where Eurovision is going, which is becoming way more theatrical, way more character, perhaps that's been lost.
I think what Melodifestivalen lost is Eurovision. They don't, what you talked about before, you can join Melodifestivalen and people are fine with that. They don't have the connection to Eurovision. It's not a dream to go to Melodifestivalen and win so you can go to Eurovision. It's the dream to go to Melodifestivalen and you get the final and you get a hit. And when Christer Björkman was running this, which you talked about before, he was 100% coming from Eurovision. He's a Eurovision nerd. He went into make Melodifestivalen to something to break out Eurovision. The people who are left now in Melodifestivalen, they are brought up with Melodifestivalen. Melodifestivalen is the thing. It has no connections to Eurovision whatsoever. Of course, they're going to send something in the end, but the people who work with Melodifestivalen are not the same people then going to Eurovision. So it's lost its connection to Eurovision in a way, and with that comes the soul that I talked about before, but also what Eurovision is today. Like, hello, regional languages. We haven't had a song in Swedish in '98. Like we are so focused on that you have to sing in English. It needs to be something well packaged. It needs to be looking and sounding like this. That, or at least that's what SVT thinks. I think the Swedish public will soften up to it, but hey, I think we're in for some crazy hard years for the Swedes to wake up to what Eurovision is really about nowadays.
Yes, we have a question as well behind you there.
Thank you very much. So any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. It kind of follows on from what you've just been saying. Obviously, we're talking about the Swedification of Eurovision. Are we going to see increasing pushback from other broadcasters, other TV professionals? The fans are especially sometimes critical of the Swedification of Eurovision. It's becoming too streamlined. It's becoming too identikit. Have we reached peak Swedification of Eurovision? And is it going to become less so in the years to come?
Well, I don't know about you two, but I think this year there hasn't been as many changes to Eurovision as there has been in the last two hostings of it. And I don't know if that says that SVT didn't want to change too much, or if SVT didn't have too many ideas that they wanted to actually change.
Well, they've not changed very much because Eurovision is now more Swedish. The entire product is now feeling far more that vision that was quite radical in 2013 when they hosted for the first time in this current wave of professionals. And it will be interesting to see where the song contest goes from here. A Swedish team, and I would hope we would agree from yesterday in terms of your visual production and the feeling in the arena and so forth. Top draw. Guaranteed quality. The vision for SVT is more the softer, the engagement. Can people participate? Do you have a higher purpose within what the song contest is? I don't think there's far much more to go from that unless you give a certain somebody the full running order control. But I think we've got to that peak. I think the song contest going forward will be healthier to have different change coming through. Partly because Martin Österdahl said himself, the fan community are the first voices in the Eurovision world. They set the tone, they set the agenda, they write the story of the song contest. And nowadays, saying something is Swedish written or produced, you can get a negative reaction to that because it's a natural human backlash to you know, Sweden being the top dogs. We love an underdog story. It would be healthy for the song contest if other countries can lift themselves up to this level. Benke's work and the work of others from Finland, for example, I would say is a shining example how Finland's turned their national selection into a hit-making machine. There are other countries that can do the same.
So there's another question. Oh, you're saying something? So Alf has a question.
Well, thank you for a very interesting presentation and discussion. This clarified a lot of things to me, at least. Listening, I made the connection between what happened in 1961 to Swedish radio and what happened in the 1990s to Swedish television. Throughout the 1980s, Sweden was gradually invaded by satellite television, and in 1993, the mediascape was quite extensively deregulated. The first commercial terrestrial broadcaster coming on air, and so. And what happened with Melfest in 2002? The story is very much about Christer Björkman, but what were the structures and policies which permitted Christer Björkman to come forth? And this, I think, in some way falls back on what is the point of public service television today. There's a quite ongoing discussion in Sweden, should public service television do entertainment? Or should that be left to commercial broadcasters? So public service is for the serious and boring programming. And this, to me, it relates to what is the purpose of public service and what's the space of permitted action for public service broadcasters in various European countries. I don't know very much about this, but I suspect there are quite significant differences. Would you like to comment on that?
I certainly will give it a go. Why do we have a Eurovision Song Contest? There's numerous reasons for it. Of course, we have more of a vision thanks to 2013 and 16 that's kind of laid that out, and United by Music is one of the key things that we'll be hearing every single year going forward. For the EBU and for the broadcasters that take part in it, of course, the reach of the Eurovision Song Contest is pretty standard, over 150 million people every year. And Eurovision right now is becoming increasingly popular as a live television event amongst young people, especially 16 to 29-year-olds. So to have your national broadcasters in a time when television as a media form is dying out, still bring these people in has such huge value for public service broadcasting as an entity. I could argue that core group there, SVT maybe missed slightly. Melodifestivalen is very much a family show. So you get a lot of people in their 30s and 40s with children, 12 and under, for example, tuning into Melfest. Maybe Eurovision differs slightly in its target group there. But that, for me, is one thing why SVT are looking so much at engagement, making sure people can vote, enjoy the show in different ways, because this is one way of making sure that everybody in the country can engage with public service broadcasting. And the value of that and the value of entertainers buying into that helps create a cohesive society.
And I mean, I for myself, I feel like it's super important that public service has these kind of shows also, so it doesn't just get stuck with Masked Singer and things that just, I mean, this is, I mean, you can debate what's good music, but for most of us that love this content, this is good music that we have in Melodifestivalen. And some of them, some are not. But I mean, it's newly written music by artists from all different ages, singing in different languages. I mean, no commercial channel would do that because it wouldn't sell. So I mean, this is so important, and I also for much more music in public service, but that's another question. But I mean, I think it's super important that Melodifestivalen is on SVT and not on any commercial channels.
So any other questions?
Hello, and first of all, thanks for the presentation and the panel. The thing I was wondering, when I was listening, is that for me, I work in TV production in my daily life. So I was thinking how in 2002, when the big Melody Festival and Take Back came up, it tied with the success of reality TV at the time, and there were many things in common. We had Molle Holmberg, who was a contestant in Baren, who took place in 2002, and then you had the year later Brandstad City Slackers with a song about the popularity of people competing in those shows. And how Melodifestivalen, like reality shows, built a narration that went on week after week and after week and kept people engaged. And it tied up with the zeitgeist of that era. The thing I was wondering right now is what's the next step that Melodifestivalen can take to keep people involved and to foster this narration that's come slightly less in the past few editions, and to remain a trailblazer among national finals and to keep influencing Eurovision in a positive way.
What a question. I'll give one thing a go. I've mentioned there the demographics. I do think we need to have more things that are not just family entertainment and Melodifestivalen. I do think we've seen in Eurovision that art that is pushing boundaries is captivating the next generation. We need more acts that do that. It is a fair critique that Melodifestivalen can be on the sterile side of the song contest. One change I would do, we have a great, I call it the speculation storyline during Melodifestivalen week. Each week when we hear the songs as press, you see the rehearsals, you get this narrative flowing. Amplify that. I do something crazy that's more in keeping with modern music. The day of each heat in Melfest, you release the songs before the heat starts at midnight. You have acts qualifying in the first heat that can't release their music publicly for a month. It is ludicrous because those artists miss so many streams. Why? Streaming is their income. Let them do it. By the time the song comes to March, we've heard that here and there on social media and illegal streams and this and that. Get the songs out there earlier so that people can engage with them and let artists enjoy that their songs can be out there rather than holding them back. It's outdated. It's not on CDs anymore. We expect music on demand. We have to change those routines.
Yeah, it's about keeping up with the younger generation as well, isn't it? You were talking about viewing figures and how audiences are watching it. For young people, they aren't watching as much television anymore, so it's about seeing what you can do, releasing the songs beforehand so the younger audiences will perhaps hear them beforehand or see them on TikTok or whatever, and it makes them watch the TV. But the other part of your question about Melfest being a trailblazer still, I think it still will be a trailblazer, at least for the next few years, because I don't think there's another national final out there that is showing any signs of really taking over Melfest as the king of national finals across Europe. So I think Melfest is still in a pretty comfortable position, and it doesn't necessarily have to change anything, not for the next couple of years, until another national final comes knocking on the door to really take over.
So I'm terribly sorry to interrupt such an interesting conversation, and I'm just asking you to give a big round of applause to Ben and his invited guest speakers. It was a wonderful presentation. And please stay in the room. We're just moving a couple of things so that we go on to our next step in our conference. Thank you very much. Hey everybody, this is Isabel Campillo from Eurovisions. What you're about to see in a couple of minutes is some of my students who were challenged to sing some ABBA songs. Some of them had never even heard of them. So I hope you enjoy it, and please stay tuned for the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Olá, então,
Olá.
Como é que te chamas?
Nádia,
Que idade tens?
12.
Olha, o que é que tu vais cantar?
Money, 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 do ABBA.
E já conhecias a canção?
Sim.
De onde?
De uma amiga.
De uma amiga que te mostrou?
Sim.
Ok, muito bem. Então vamos a isso, Nádia.
In my dreams, I have a plan. If I got me a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work it all. I fool around and never bore. Money, 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 must be funny in the rich man's world. Money, 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 how is sunny in the rich man's world. All the things I could do if I had a little money. It's a rich man's world. It's a rich man's world.
Então, como é que te chamas?
Eu chamo Maria Beatriz.
E quantos anos tens?
Tenho 12 anos.
E o que é que vais cantar na festa?
Eu vou cantar o The Winner Takes It All do ABBA.
E já conhecias a canção?
Não.
Nunca tinhas ouvido?
Não, eu conheci porque a minha professora me disse para cantar numa apresentação no final do ano. I don't wanna talk about things we've gone through. With all this hurting me, now it's history. I've played all my cards, and that's what you've done too. Nothing more to say, no more race to play. The winner takes it all. The loser standing small beside the victory. That's our destiny.
Olá!
Olá,
Então, qual é o teu nome?
chamo Beatriz Cardoso,
Que idade é que tens, Beatriz?
tenho 17 anos.
Então, e o que é que tu vais cantar na festa?
Vou cantar o SOS do ABBA.
E olha, já conhecias a canção?
Sim, conhecia por causa do filme Mamma Mia.
Muito bem. Ok, obrigada.
Where are those happy days? They seem so hard to find. I try to reach for you, but you have closed your mind. Whatever happened to our love? I wish I understood. It used to be so nice, it used to be so good. So when you hear me, darling, can't you hear me? SOS. The love you gave me, nothing else could take me. SOS. When you're gone, how can I even try to go on? When you're gone, though I try, how can I carry on?
Olá! Como é que te chamas?
Sou Ian Rosado, tenho 21 anos. Eu conheço esta música, o Dancing Queen, conheci através do filme da Mamma Mia.
E esta versão do Luís Capaldi?
É muito boa.
Então, vamos ouvir um bocadinho. When you get the
You are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine, oh yeah.
anos tens?
12.
E olha, já conhecias o Gimme Gimme?
Não.
Foi a primeira vez que o viste e que estás a cantar. E agora vamos para o rapaz. Como é que te chamas?
Rafael.
Rafael. Quantos anos tens?
16.
E tu já conhecias o Gimme Gimme?
Conheci um bocadinho, já tinha ouvido.
Portanto, não foi a primeira vez que ouviste. Ok, muito bem, então vamos a isto.
Shadows away. Give me a man after midnight to take me through the darkness to the break of the day.
So thank you so much for waiting a bit. You know, technology can be sometimes very difficult to deal. So with no further delay, I want to thank you, Rita, for welcoming us and hosting us here in Media Evolution. And Rita is here in our stage to present this wonderful book. Let me show you that you can have. It's here. You can fetch one for you and one for your friends, all friends. So Rita, the stage is yours. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone on my behalf as well. Welcome to Media Evolution. Yeah, my name is Reetta Hafner, and I lead our foresight work here at Media Evolution. I'll be presenting the book today and a little bit about the process that took us to this book and what it is and why I hope you can bring it with you as a souvenir of your times in Malmö, but also as a little provocation to start thinking about how we gather through sound and song in the future. Media Evolution, the place where you find yourselves today, is a non-profit, members-owned organization. We have 180 member organizations, including universities in southern Sweden, also public institutions like municipalities and the region of Skåne, as well as private companies, small, medium, and large, that work roughly with different creative industries, city development, and technology and innovation. We're a place of community for gathering. We're also a physical place. This place there, over here, where we get together. We also have a co-working space. We have some of our members who have their offices here. We have this public space over here, a restaurant, and so on. And we are also an organization that works to build foresight and competence in southern Sweden, in the region. And this book is part of those initiatives. Let me see. Here's the book, Waves of the Blue Sea, that describes different futures of sound and song placed here in Malmö, Sweden in the year 2050. The book and also the whole process that led up to this, the collaborative foresight cycle that we held here in January to March this year, started off with this question: how might gathering and bonding around a social bonfire look, feel, and sound like in Malmö in 2050? We were very much prompted by the fact that we knew Eurovision was coming to town. We were also very curious about how the people in our community who work, who research, who create sounds and songs, what they see that the future might bring. We're also very curious and very much landing these different futures here to Malmö, like we are gathering this week here in Malmö around sound and song, and how might that look in 26 years? We know. In our work, this is not the only book and not the only collaborative foresight cycle that we've done. We apply different principles when we work with the future. First of all, we're not trying to find and predict that one future. We want to expand our imaginations of what possible futures might actually come, so that we can better prepare, we can better shape change, and we can be better at anticipating the different changes that are taking place. That being the first principle. And secondly, we're very curious about our so-called anticipatory assumptions. What do we imagine the future to bring, and why do we imagine certain things to happen? And by expanding these, maybe we can find new opportunities for us to both prepare better, but also to shape change. And that being the final principle, acknowledging that futures are very much created. Futures are very much created, and we all have a responsibility towards future generations to consider what are the futures that we're shaping and creating today through our actions. Our collaborative foresight work is often organized in the following way. We gather into open workshops of signal scanning. We then invite a group of 20 core contributors to a 2 days of workshops where they create scenarios on the topic. These scenarios are then put out into the community in a form of an open workshop, in the form of a community critique, that are then brought back, the feedback is brought back to the core group that then uses this to improve on the scenarios, to learn, but also imagine alternative and desirable futures of sound and song. And then finally, we host a seminar where we invite experts to join in and build on the questions that have emerged, as well as release the book. And this took place a couple of weeks ago because we knew that Malmö was going to get busy. We wanted to get the seminar out of the way before all this shebang started. The core group, a very important group in this process, was about 20 people. Both we had designers, we had musicians in, we had music event organizers participating, sound engineers, researchers, including Andreas here, was part of the core group. This group got together in the course of 4 days to explore, share their insights, their observations about the future, and then collectively imagine what type of possible futures might emerge going forward. Some of the questions that we discovered, and I've heard some of these questions also being brought up today, and I know that some of you are very much researching these questions, and these are some of the questions that we then dive deeper into, where, for instance, around technology and music production. Will it really matter who makes music, even if it's a machine, as long as we like the song? Will we be experiencing the same sounds and songs together simultaneously? Or will the sounds of our lives, from our soundtracks to our soundscapes, be customized to our tastes and wishes? Will the artist retain power of the end product? Or will creation be this process of open-ended, fluid collaboration and mixing and remixing? Will it be the industry driving the music scene? Will the artist have a final say? Or how about the audience? Will they dictate? Very much touching actually on some of the questions that we heard in the previous panel. And how about silence and natural songs? Will this become a luxury especially in our cities, but in our lives in general? And how about this big question of, will sounds and songs connect us, or will they take us apart? Very topical also this week at Eurovision. Here, some, not answers, but some inspiration of this can be found in this book, Futures of Sound and Song, The Waves of the Blue Sea, that I hope you get a copy of. You have some beautiful illustrations by a local artist called Mukome, who's created illustrations based on the content of the book. We have some commentary chapters, 2 of them. One of a local researcher, sorry, my slides are, called Nicolas, who writes about, and he was also part of the core group, he writes about decolonial approaches to music, how music can be a tool of power and resistance. One of the questions that also came up in the cycle. And then a very well-known architect agency based in Copenhagen, where we have Maria and Liselot writing about the sounds, the future sounds of our cities, and how do we create soundscapes that are inclusive and good for us going forward. And then you will find 3 stories of possible futures of sound and song. These are created, and you'll also find the original scenarios in the book, 3 scenarios that were created by the core group, as well as 3 stories that are written by Paul Graham Raven, who's a sci-fi author and a researcher who's been with us throughout the whole journey, and captured some of the imaginations of the core group in beautiful stories of fictional real-life people who will be living in Malmö in the year 2050. These futures, the 3 futures, include the following. We have a future 1 called The Name of the Game, which is a future where we have, I think this quote says a lot from the scenario itself. In this future, the AI powered by the world's sound bank seamlessly blends our musical tastes and latest playlists without even us noticing, registering our presence through our devices, except for Lasse, because he has opted out of the Global Attribution User Agreement of 2044. So very technologically AI-enhanced future where whatever you're listening is always mediated by someone. And in the story, you'll find a group of friends who've grown up together, getting ready for a night out. And you have people who are definitely in the system, enjoying all the benefits. And then you have Lasse who has decided not to be part of this. And what does that mean for a musician like Lasse? We have feature 2 called Brain Phone, which is based in Malmö in the year 2050, where Malmö is one of these auditively augmented cities. And you'll find Jan, who is biking through the city and listening to all the different soundscapes of the city through an implant called the Brain Phone that everyone has gotten installed. So a very provocative scenario in many ways. And he is rushing over to south of Möllan, on the other side of the city, because someone has dropped a tune, a new composition, a very rare thing to happen. There are not a lot of newness and novelty in this future. And he's rushing through on his bike to get to be one of the first people to witness this song that is placed in this particular neighborhood. And then The Way in feature 3, you'll find a Malmö in the 2050 that looks very different from now. It's a world. It's part of the world. Malmö is part of a world where we have global climate change impacting many places. A lot of people have arrived to Malmö. A lot of social infrastructures that we take for granted today have broken down, but there is still sound and song. You find people, young people, who belong to a group called the Sonies, who are using sound and using song to connect and to create some stability in a very unstable time. And at the same time, you find the Sonoras, who are there to disrupt and use song and organize really loud, disturbing parties to break and belong in their non-belonging and break any stability that tries to connect. These stories, as fictional as they might seem, are very much built on the changes and developments that we see today and expanded on, well, what if these things continue on evolving? What might happen to the sounds and songs and how we gather through them? These are invitations to really start to think about what are the changes that we see and how can we prepare for the changes that are underway? What are the futures that we are part of creating, and how can we shape change towards the futures that we want to see in the future? So I hope you get a book. Also, if you can't get enough of Malmö, please come back for the conference. End of August, we have a very interesting 2 days coming up. Our Futures Conference, where we bring speakers from all around the world to talk about different types of futures, a lot of creative processes, design, including Anab Jain from Superflax, who will talk about rewilding our imaginations. And before you leave, make sure to have a look at our Futures Library. That's an open community space that we opened just a couple of weeks ago, where we get and collect sources that have to do with our shared futures. It's right there by the entrance. And with this, I would like to just read a little snippet of the book as a kind of invitation for you to maybe look at Malmö in different light as you venture out into the Eurovision atmosphere in the city. And this is from the scenario The Way, the final world, that looks very different, as said, from Malmö today. Yeah. In the cities further north, meanwhile, the last scientists and philosophers debate the dynamics of change and renewal, develop hypothetical models on paper in silicon. They know that they must change. Indeed, they knew so long ago, and their paymasters refuse to listen. But they are too late now to change the way they see the world. If they were not too late, they might look at the city, see the Sony and the Sonora, and see in them an answer, only one answer, not the answer, and definitely not a solution, but an answer nevertheless. And that answer gathers three truths together. First truth, some people will always seek continuity, safety, familiarity. The Sony instinctively bind together groups of these people. The agent of that binding is memory, a glue made from the ghosts of music past. Second truth, some people will always seek disruption, risk, the strange. The Sonara instinctively finds spaces of stagnation, stir them up, convening new collisions. The agent of that steering is novelty, a tool made from dreams of an unquantifiable futurity. From the massed people of the city, these two principles emerge without any prompting, without any precedent. They leapt across linguistic and cultural gaps, fueled by the restless energy of youth, sustained and shaped by the yearning of the human heart to find those with whom it might beat in sync. Order from chaos, chaos from order, the wheel spins on. Third truth, some Sony grow restless and become Sonora. Some Sonora grow tired and become Sony. To either tribe, this is blasphemy, of course, but the music will always play for as long as there's ears to hear it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just a quick question, if I may.
Yeah, do we have time? Yeah.
Just very quick.
Yes.
For the people who are watching this online, can they obtain the book somehow?
They can.
Yeah.
Yes.
How?
On this website,
Yep.
Media Evolution on the slide, there is, you just go into our books, and there you can download a free PDF copy of the book.
Okay.
So make sure
mediaevolution.se, right?
SE, yes. It's on the slide under the thank you
All right.
as well. So please go and download and let us know what you think.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you, Rita. Thank you so much for this wonderful moment. And I ask to my colleagues to join on the stage. So it's time to say goodbye, I think.
Say goodbye.
It's incredible, but it's already over. The wonderful Eurovision conference, the 7th edition, about music, identity and migration. And I think we had 2 wonderful conference days packed with precious information, with great panels, with a wonderful science slam. And here I repeat our invitation. If you are writing your bachelor thesis or your master thesis or your doctoral thesis, contact us and be part of Eurovisions next year, wherever the Eurovision circus might take us.
So we also try to keep the Eurovision music alive in our breaks, be it by the wonderful art of our longtime collaborator and friend, Kojun, as well as by young music students who were challenged to sing ABBA songs, mostly unknown to them. And what it was to begin our conference with Eurovision Song Contest themes played and sung by Henry King and our lovely Erin Corey. So it is our purpose to keep the Eurovision Song Contest as a trigger for diversified discussion around the social sciences, as well as to invite every person interested in the Eurovision to join us, bringing new ideas and personal contributions, and continuing to enlarge this community. So thank you very much, and see you next year in, who knows?
Yeah, and again, for me, it's a special honor, and I'm happy to the bottom of my heart that we are here in Malmö today, because 11 years ago, when I just was a little scholar at Malmö Högskola, I had this crazy idea, why are there scholars out in the world working on Eurovision? We should have a conference, and we did so, and that was where we met for the first time. And that's so great to have seen the journey of Eurovision's taking off the ground. And I'm so happy that we were able to host you, Erin, here at Malmö University, with support from the Faculty of Arts and Humanities or Social Sciences maybe, but we also from Linnaeus University, where I work, where we could bring in both Linus and Jan-Olof Gulle, who are professors at our university. And myself on a little corner, and maybe I once upon the time will take the step to even write something about Eurovision. I think I'm there now. I could at least write about the media discourse and things like that. And then for those of you who want to hear more scholars talking about Eurovision, there's still another chance this week at Malmö University, where our colleagues from European Studies are bringing in this great Eurovision Day at Malmö University with support of the EU Direct EU Commission. There will be lots of ambassadors there, great opportunities for journalists to do interviews and to engage more with our colleagues, because there are also other colleagues talking who did not talk here today. And Dan, I think, will be talking, yourself, Karen Fricker. So it's a great lineup on Friday, don't miss that opportunity. And there are 300 free lunches that might still be up for grabs. So with that being said, I'm also very happy that the Malmö weather has played well over these 2 days. Yeah, because like 2 weeks ago it was snowing, and you know. So and Martin and Rita, thank you so much for having us here at Malmö Evolution City, so Media Evolution City, and for presenting the book to us. So thank you very much, and yeah, have a good continuation.
So thank you again. So yeah, we were united by Malmö 11 years ago. So I have this task. I have a huge list of acknowledgements. So I want to thank you again, Andreas. I want to thank Erin Corey for hosting us in the Malmö University. As well, I want to thank you, Wilfred van Dalen, our colleague, Carla Figueira, and Paul David Flood, Felix Herring, Paul Lashmana, Ben Robertson, and our musicians, Cor June and Eric King. So for the website development, I want to thank to Gonçalo Antunes de Oliveira, and for the designing of our flyers and communication for Gonçalo Conceição. I can't forget our speakers of these 2 days. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, giving us more food for thought. So it's a pleasure to welcome you in our conference. So I need also to thanks to the institutions that support us, such as Malmö University, Linnaeus University, Media Evolution, Ethnomusicology Institute in Lisbon, Goldsmiths University of London, and Center for World Music in Hanover, and OGIE Portugal and ESC Insight. And of course, I want to thank you all for staying here in these 2 days with us, and thank you people online for following us. And you can find the videos online during all years, so you can repeat and repeat and repeat. So go ahead. And thank you, my team. See you next year. Who knows where. Thank you. Woo!